In the world of the main character, there is one unique phenomenon, and that is magical supermatter. The stronger the magical power, the more powerful the magician. Sky is a member of the Earl's family. He is also a mage who failed to reach 1,000 points by the time he was 15. One of the guys mocked the character, saying that he had no human rights. The boy is a B-class mage. Clutching his head, the boy said that he was tired and did not want to compete. One of the guys suddenly shouted that Sky was not tired, but was in good shape. Due to the use of water magic, one of the guys ended up with a small ball of water in his hands. Brango aggressively chased after someone, shouting that everyone would fall to their knees. His friend ran after him. Sky, a B-class mage, was an aristocrat. Suddenly, the blonde boy declared that his natural magic was water. He reported that the main character would not die, but would simply have something slightly broken. Looking at the enraged boy, the main character aimed his magical power at Brango. After this, the enemy recoiled, falling to the ground. He was surrounded by his friends, who did not understand what had happened. The protagonist chuckled, noting that his friend was being too content with himself. Only 2 years ago, angry and disgruntled cries could be heard from the huge castle. In front of Sky stood 2 men, one of whom was clutching his head, saying that at his age the protagonist's brother was about 100. The thing was, the guy's magic power was only 5. The men exclaimed, saying that they had never seen a number lower than that. In addition, the young master's natural magic was 0. Upon learning this, the father exclaimed. He sincerely did not understand why things were so bad for his son. The protagonist hung his head, listening to his father's lectures. Suddenly, the mature man rudely stated that with such data, the guy cannot be part of Vincent's family. A year later, the family cut ties with Sky, not wanting to have anything to do with him. The main character spent all his time in the nearby forest, enjoying freedom. He stood near the tree, directing his hand and gazed towards the bird flapping above him. The only magic he can use is the magic bullet, which is what beginners use to practice magic control. Having attacked the bird, the young man crouched down and leaned against the ground. He began to look around at the bird that had fallen to the ground, which had been killed with a magic bullet. Suddenly, Sky felt strange. He couldn't use magical power. The hero didn't understand how it was possible. Suddenly, a noise caught his attention. The guy screamed loudly, looking around and asking who was there. In front of him was a man who was happy that he could find a magician who uses the power of 0. The stranger was ready to explain everything to the guy and show him. The blonde man smiled. Introducing himself as Ans, he said he was very pleased to meet Sky. All this time, the main character looked with incomprehension at the light magician, who smiled sincerely. The forest around the heroes acquired bright and light colors, illuminating the heroes with its brilliance and beauty. While roasting a caught bird on a spit, the main character offered the blonde a piece of this bird. Suddenly, Sky asked what his uncle meant when he spoke about this earlier. Pointing his finger at the man, the young man added to the question. He was interested in what the man had said earlier about the time he saw him use 0 magic. The blonde man sighed heavily when he heard that the hero wanted to hear what he had told him earlier. Sky screamed that he wanted to be like his uncle in the future. Gnawing on the bones of a caught and roasted bird, the magician thought and suddenly said that the main character would not be able to. He also noted with resentment that he was not the character's uncle. The guy apologized and said that he would call him Mr. Ans. The young man introduced himself as Sky Vincent and stated that he had a request for the magician. Jumping up, the hero began to beg the surprised Ans to teach him the magic that he had just used. The confused man agreed to teach the boy magic but added that he did not advise him to do so. Sky asked why, surprised. He also exclaimed in confusion, "Is it really true that the magic that blocks the enemy's magical power is not the strongest?" The blonde began to talk about how the previous magic known as magic seal could only be used by certain people. If the hero practices, he might be able to use it one day. However, the consumed magical power is enormous, namely about 980, while Sky's is only 5. Also, the effect will only last for 3 seconds. Natural power 0, which is said to work very poorly. And it has one more drawback. Hearing this, Sky turned away offended, waiting for the man to finish his speech. The magician asked the main character if he knew about magical speed, and the guy replied that he knew. The basic concept of magic power is magic speed, magic operations, magic meaning, magic nature, magic strength. What is magic speed? It is the speed at which magic moves to reach its target. The speed varies depending on the method. there is a speed error depending on the user. Sky began to understand that this meant that by strengthening his magic, he would increase his power. Ants agreed with this conclusion. But the guy became very angry, and his face distorted into an evil grimace. He sincerely did not understand why he was learning all this. At this time, Ants thought about it. And he soon replied that in this world, where everything has been held for a long time, false knowledge is spreading unbridled. Ants looked at the protagonist with a serious look and said affirmatively that magic speed is magic transformation speed. Sky looked at the blonde man in surprise. He was curious about what magical transformations were. He had never heard such a word, but the magician replied that it was easier to understand by feeling it than by hearing it from him. Suddenly, the man stood up and declared that from today on, he would put a seal on him. The casting time of the magic seal is 8 seconds. Ants ordered the boy to count the time when he starts casting the spell. At the same moment, the light mage began to cast a seal on the main character. A translucent brand appeared in the air. Sky realized that the sealing process had begun, which meant it was time to start counting. Starting from the very beginning, the young man counted to 8, but it all ended only when Sky counted to 10. At the end, the main character turned to Ansu. He noted that it took 10 seconds to get there. The magician agreed, saying that it took 9.2 seconds when he was moving in a straight line. It is this lag of 1.2 of a second that is the speed of transformation of magical power. Sky asked if a gap of 1.2 of a second wasn't a bad thing, and Anne said that was a lie. It is this lag of 1.2 of a second that is the speed of transformation of magical power. The magic conversion coefficient is 87%. The world average is 50%. Using his new powers, Sky heard Ants say that the protagonist was one of the people who surpassed the transformation coefficient. The magician whose magic conversion rate is 100% is a legendary creature called Laganasi. Sky has all the qualities to become Laganasham. Hearing this, the guy's mouth dropped open in surprise. He is faster than anyone else. This will allow the young man to shoot more magic bullets than others. Ends began to prophesy to the captured guy that he could become the fastest and most powerful wizard. Opening his mouth in surprise and looking at the magician with admiration, the main character repeated his words with delight. The blonde magician offered the boy to become his student, or he would not become the legendary Laganasi. The guy's eyes lit up at that very second, and he tried to answer something. Suddenly, Sky thought about something and looked completely sad and puzzled. Suddenly, he stated in disappointment that he had no abilities, because he was just a weak boy who was abandoned by his family. He was about to leave, saying at the end that he would not be able to live up to his teacher's expectations. Sky bowed his head and apologized to Ants, but he only glanced sideways at the guy, thinking about something and deciding. Looking at his bag, he asked the guy if he was ready. After all, the magician doesn't care at all how much magical power the main character has. Hearing this, the tears dried on the main character's face, and he looked at the teacher with hope in his eyes. Suddenly, the boy cried out, asking if the amount of magic power really didn't matter, and Ants said he was glad to see the boy. Vincent remembered what others had said about him not being able to appear on the streets even though he had a total magic power of 5. He recalled being scolded for his low performance. Everyone turned away from the boy, and his own family decided to abandon Sky because he was a disgrace to the family. Remembering all this, the young man seriously thought about his life and looked into the eyes of the satisfied Ansu. The hero sighed with delight, and a satisfied smile appeared on his face. The guy loudly shouted words of gratitude to his master and smiled broadly. To begin with, the teacher asked Sky to measure his abilities. He extended his hand to him where he was clutching some spheres, telling him to fire a magic bullet. The young man did not understand at all what it was that was given to him, and the master replied that it was a tool for measuring the level of skills, the speed of the MSB, and the KPMS rating. The words about the conversion rate of magic power and skill level attracted the boy. Hearing that Ans would tell him about it next time, Sky decided to try using magic bullets. A huge board appeared in front of him. The main character began to press the symbols. In a split second, he shot through the tree, which was cut in half. The chips flew in all directions. The teacher jumped up to the student, demanding that he show him the 3 spheres. There were numbers written on them, and Anne saw that the magic conversion rate was 95%. The hero's level was 82, and his magic power conversion rate was 98%. The spheres laid out on his hand brought Anne's into complete delight. The man shouted loudly, addressing Sky, that it was simply amazing because now his student was a genius. He clapped loudly and jumped with joy like a child. Ants was happy that this was his student. Just a year ago, the main character thought that the living were lonely, but now his life has changed dramatically. These thoughts made the main character smile and look at his master with admiration. And from that day on, the days of training with ants began. Sky trained to use magic bullets in the forest under the supervision of a master. They used magic together. After that, they had a hearty meal, resting from the long training sessions. It was deep night, the moon sank above them. At this time, the main character was reading books, trying to learn something new about his power. But the master pointed to his hand, indicating that it was late. Their training lasted for a long time. The heroes fought against each other. Ends tried to wear out his student, cultivating patience in him. The hero hung from a tree, training his willpower. After all these exercises, Sky was very tired. He fell onto the cold grass. The master looked at his student with an admiring smile. 6 months later, the characters came into town, and Anne stated that this was the essence of their training today. They stood near the Adventurers Guild and looked at the large building. The teacher needed money. He said that there was no loss in earnings, so they came to this place. Ans approached the receptionist, saying that he wanted to take the job. He was told that the request could be accepted that very second. Taking the piece of paper, the man began to look at what could be done. The friends headed to the mountains because their mission was to tame the snow yeti. Ans stated that the guy's strength was over 50, so he thinks that the yeti is a very good opponent in terms of strength. The reward was also not bad if you live in such a snowy mountain, of course. Suddenly the ground beneath the men shook and trembled. Sky looked at his teacher in fear, not understanding what was happening to the ground. Suddenly someone's cold breath fell on both boys. They looked back and saw a large snow giant heading towards them. The monster began to wave its huge, hairy paws. He beat himself on the chest and screamed furiously. The rule that the teacher gave the main character was to be extremely careful with such a creature. This big guy's nature is earth. With his physical form, he can jump for 3 minutes. The boy beamed, realizing that the ideal spell time was 4 seconds, while the norm was 6 seconds. This meant that his magic conversion rate was 65%. In this way, Sky measured the conversion rate of magical speed during the fight. Suddenly, the yeti jumped and rushed at his friends. He roared and screamed loudly, sweeping away everything in his path and reaching his goal. The protagonist used his seal to attack the monster. At this very time, the creature was trying to reach Sky with its woolen hand. He bared his hideous, rotten teeth and looked straight into the eyes of the main character. A smile spread across his face. He stood firmly on his hand, leaning on the ground and preparing to jump. But the main character attacked him much faster than the yeti did. The guy used magic bullets to defeat his opponent. Snow piled high across the entire area. Very deafening sounds were heard from all sides. Sky realized that the monster was not keeping up with him at all. The hero used healing. If the guy keeps shooting, he will be able to defeat his snowy rival. And even without the help of a master, the young man will be able to do this if he tries. He decided to use his magical power again, opening a round board in front of him. Sky continued to attack the snow mutant, realizing that he could do it alone. The big guy suddenly fell to the ground and growled loudly in pain. Realizing that he had won, the guy praised himself and noted that the fight had gone smoothly. Suddenly, loud screams and roars of this creature were heard behind him again. The guy looked in the direction of the enemy with incomprehension. He opened his toothy mouth and began to attack the main character, but the young man did not lose his head. The growl was so loud that it blocked his ears. Sky grabbed his ears with his hands. The mutant approached him, grinning in a terrible smile. Then the hero realized that he was finished. But suddenly the yeti fell to the ground, hit by many magic bullets. Ans told the hero that it could be reminiscent of his bullet, but the casting time was only 1 second. He only used it because the enemy was a yeti. Now Sky has to use it against him too. The teacher called it the hemp method. If the boy learns it, he can use it as a backup. The protagonist stood in front of his snow opponent and waited for him to attack so he could use his power against him. The guy's gaze took on an evil look and he bared his teeth, looking at the monster. The hero still didn't fully understand magic, but now was clearly not the time to think about it. The guy began to try to focus on what he could do in such a situation. Board opened in front of him again, and he began to look for something to use against the creature. Having finally found what he needed, the guy decided to use it. Ens looked at his student in surprise and was already ready to help him. Suddenly he realized that the speed of his spells had increased. The guy began to mercilessly attack his opponent using magic bullets. Huge chunks of snow flew towards the enemy, who had already fallen to the ground and was looking at Sky with resentment. The Yeti tried to use his power against his opponent, but nothing worked. The young man became much faster and could now jump even further, dodging attacks. His speed increased with each passing second, and he tried to attack his opponent. The Yeti walked towards him, but many bullets flew at his feet. The hero understood that even if the monster had great strength, he still could not lose to it. And suddenly smiled, realizing that the hero had used double change and his speed had increased. The young man resisted fiercely and tried to kill his enemy. The character knew he would hit the monster at least 1,000 times before he himself would be hit. The teacher looked at his student and understood that he would become the fastest magician. The speed of the protagonist's magical transformation was 100%. Suddenly the monster fell down alive, and cold air came out of its disgusting mouth. The creature fell backwards, and the main character looked at the fallen Yeti the whole time. His face showed fatigue and aggression. Sky realized that he had managed to defeat this creature. At this time, the teacher exclaimed that this was simply amazing, and the character also rejoiced. The master shook the boy, saying that he had reached 100% of the magic power conversion rate for the magic bullet. They were both happy because Ans couldn't believe that he saw this miracle with his own eyes. The hero used the hemp method to reach 100%, and he succeeded. Sky was jubilant, realizing that he had done it and was now considered the most powerful magician. The young man thanked the master for giving him such advice because it helped. The character thanked the teacher for such great help. The boy still has a lot to learn. The brunette smiled widely, looking at his best teacher. The teacher replied that he was glad to have met a student like Sky. His lips stretched into a wide, radiant smile. In a world where mana is considered absolute, Sky's family disowned him due to his meager mana. But one day after meeting the mysterious mage Ans, the hero learned that KMPS was more important than the amount of mana and that he was a genius at it. Now the hero began to train with Ansa, gaining more experience. Soon the main character became a legendary creature with 100% KMPS, under the name Lagless. In the guilds, the heroes were given money for the completed task, namely, killing the Yeti. The woman stated that this was all very surprising, since the heroes had defeated A rank on their first mission. Suddenly Sky rebelled because he didn't know it was just an A rank, but the teacher thought it was a good lesson. The character realized that he was able to become a Lagless, which means he learned a lot. Ans also noted that the protagonist's EMP and skill level had reached 100% in the last check. As expected, the guy has a good attitude towards magic. The guy saw something amazing in this. Suddenly, Sky realized that the master had not spoken about these two topics at all, but Ans was fixated on something else. Both characters went out into the city and began to walk along the crowded streets. The master explained that skill levels are different for each magic spell. It shows how well you master a specific spell. For example, if the current you and the you 6 months ago shot a magic bullet at the same time, either the bullet of the previous hero would fly off to the side, or the higher level wins. After hearing this, the guy realized that he now wanted to talk about EMF. Ans explained that a magic spell requires 100 MS. The actual MS needed for that spell depends on the EMF of the caster. Therefore, if a person with 50% EMP casts a spell that requires 100 MS, it will take him 200 MS. Now the protagonist has understood the speed of magic transformation and the efficiency of magic transformation. As long as these two indicators are high, the amount of mana of the hero is not so important. Now that the character has reached 100% in all the necessary aspects, there is the ability to become even stronger. Suddenly, the teacher suggested going to the store and buying a baton. The heroes entered the shop and the protagonist's eyes began to run wild from the amount of assortment. All the walls were hung with swords, various weapons and blades. On the other side there were vases and hammers, and also arrows and bows. Using a wand as a medium when casting a spell will allow you to fire something more powerful. The natural properties of wands allow magical power to flow more easily than the human body. And suggested choosing a uniform for the main character. The teacher explained that even if they call it a staff, it does not mean that it is a wooden stick. They are different: affinity with a magic spell, ease of presentation, someone's preference. These three influence the power of the spell. That's what Ans said. Is different for everyone. For example, there are wands in the form of a folding fan and a katana. Wanted the main character to think carefully and choose the one that suits his fighting style. Looking at his clenched fist, the guy began to think about what kind of rod would suit him. He decided to start with what unique features he has. The obvious thing is that he has a meager amount of mana, so wands that require a lot of mana are out of the question. Next, the protagonist had an incredible spell casting speed, but he couldn't take advantage of this ability. His magic bullet skill has reached 100. It is definitely his greatest weapon. But the character's strongest point is long-range combat using a magic bullet. A staff that allows rapid-fire attacks suited him. Suddenly, Sky realized what he needed. He pointed his finger at the rod he needed. Several days have passed since passing the test and purchasing the wand. Both heroes also finished tuning the staff. Ens wanted to test how much the hero's bullet power would increase if he used the staff. First, the young man had to hit the center with his magic bullet. There was no need to move away. He could absorb the magic power. The main character began to prepare for the attack and looked at his target. He took the staff in his hand and prepared to use the magic bullets. Suddenly, the protagonist's eyes widened and sparkled. The huge pistol in his hand was ready to fire. The guy started shooting furiously at the obstacle. The center and other arcs were also shot with the main character's magic weapon. The teacher praised the boy for choosing a gun-shaped staff. That was good of him. Moreover, since the young man can use dual spells, dual weapons are suitable for him. Now they could change the power of the spell by observing the degree to which the circles changed color outside of the direct hit. The teacher began to read, explaining the conditions for using his staff. Without the staff, she was about 200. The main character looked questioningly at the master, not understanding what he wanted from him. But instead, Sky was too weird. Because the spell power of the magic bullet is more than 500, the master screamed with delight. Typically, it increases from 1.1 to 1.3 times. But the master himself had never heard of a staff that increases strength by 2.5 times. Based on this, the affinity between the protagonist and the staff is simply amazingly excellent. The young man was sincerely happy that he had achieved such a great result. Now Ens decided to make time for repetition. He asked the boy how many broad categories magic spells were divided into. Thinking that there are beginner's spell, intermediate spells, preliminary spells, forbidden spells, or old magic, he answered that there are only 4. The teacher praised the hero for the correct answer and said that now they would forget about the forbidden spells and analyze the remaining 3 categories. Ens told the guy standing opposite him that this categorization had been used consistently since ancient times. The boy noted that the casting time for intermediate spells ranged from the same to 4. Moreover, beginner spells are useful against a single enemy, intermediate spells are useful against multiple enemies, and advanced spells release destructive power once per hit. Ens praised the hero for such a broad knowledge and said that even if the guy was not a legendary Legless, he could still become an excellent student as a healer. Suddenly, the teacher realized that he had not told the hero at all that he was a magician healer, although he did not look like one. The boy silently looked at the fair-haired man who told him about this. How suddenly Sky grabbed his face, screaming that it was too sudden, but the teacher also said that the boy could have found this information in books. The master explained that within these 3 categories, spells could also be classified based on their power. If the guy's magic bullet now has a normal spell power of 200, then if he uses the wand, it will be equal to 500. In addition, the character is also capable of double casting a magic bullet. Looking at the student standing in front of him, Ens asked him if he understood everything. After all, the power of the spell is equal to 1,000 for only 0.1 of a second, and for 0.2 of a second it can exceed the power of the spell of advanced. The protagonist felt a lump in his throat when he heard about this. He thought that the idea of an absolute amount of mana was absurd after all. He never imagined that a magic bullet could be so powerful. The teacher said that he thought he knew everything about magic, but it seemed that he needed to learn too. Ens wanted to take Sky's magic wand, when suddenly he received a sharp blow. The hero turned away, telling the teacher not to touch his child. Ens was very surprised. Half a year of their students and preparation passed. Sky continued to master his magic wand in the form of a pistol. At this time, the master closed his eyes in pleasure and exhaled. He slammed his book shut, and after that he called the main character by name while he was playing with his weapon. He praised the boy for his excellent talent, as he had gone through rigorous training without giving up for a minute. Since a year has already passed, the boy has become a legendary Legless and has become much stronger. There could be beads of sweat running down the guy's face because he couldn't believe that all of this had happened so quickly and suddenly. The teacher said that he taught the hero everything he knew. That's why he wants to end his journey here and return to his homeland. The boy hung his head and asked Ants if he was really leaving Vincent's territory. The teacher answered in the affirmative. Sky looked down sadly, not believing that his best teacher was leaving. The master noticed the sad expression on the protagonist's face and decided that he needed to cheer him up. He explained that he was ashamed to throw everything at his father, and besides, his betrothed was waiting for him at home. But he was not with her because no matter what, Ants wanted to meet the legendary Legolas that the master always talked about, and then he met him. Sky noted that he thought that his fiancée had already left him after such a long time, but the man replied that she loved him too much. Folding his arms, the blonde noted that this year had been the most useful for him. Now it was the master's turn to thank Sky for the work done. The main character clenched his fists tightly and decided to say something. He turned sadly to the master, who looked at him in surprise. Sky asked that if you count this year, it will be 4 years, but Ins tried to calm the hero down. He began to beg the hero to return to his girlfriend as soon as possible, but the blonde only sighed. Then the main character began to shout loudly for Ans to hurry to the bride, but the master only replied that when they start to persuade him to return, he wants to stay a little longer. Therefore, he decided to set out in a week because he would also need to prepare food. Ans agreed and suddenly turned to his student, lowering his head. The master noted that a whole week of preparation is a waste of time. Then the fair-haired hero offered Sky to fight one last time, and the main character enthusiastically accepted his master's offer, telling him not to complain if he was hurt. The heroes stood opposite each other and prepared to attack. Sky took it upon himself to start first, and no one stopped him from doing so. The teacher was surprised that the boy decided to use a double spell right after the start. Many bullets flew at the man. They began to resist fiercely, trying to inflict severe damage on each other. The master said with a grin that he was at a disadvantage in a shootout, and his body flew back several meters towards a tree. Sky began shooting at the tree, behind which the blonde man was hiding. After this, the boy stopped, looking with delight at his victory. But having decided to shoot some more, he began to hit the tree with his bullets. Suddenly, the tree finally broke into 2 pieces. But when the dust settled back on the ground, the boy saw that there was no one behind the tree. He looked around the area in confusion, seeing that the master had disappeared. Only a fallen tree lay near him, but Ansa was nowhere nearby. The hero removed his finger from the trigger and sighed heavily, not knowing what to do. Sky looked to the right and couldn't see anyone. Then he looked to the right side and completely despaired, realizing that he had missed something. The young man sat down on a fallen tree and thought seriously, not understanding where the master could have gone. Suddenly, someone attacked him from behind his back. The sweat drained from the main character's face, and he realized that he was in deep trouble. Ens decided to use the magic seal. The blonde man looked at his student with a smile. Sky knew that at that distance it would take 0.2 of a minute to reach him, and in that time he could fire 4 bullets. But if the main character does this, he will not be able to defeat his teacher. He had no chance of defeating him in close combat. Then after this thought, a wide smile appeared on the guy's face. He was burning out. What should I do? There was something Sky was able to hide from the master the day he became a Legolas. The guy noticed that he had a new power. Now the hero was attacking his teacher. He could only use the new power that had opened up for 10 seconds. But the big plus is that the spell's power is doubled, and the casting time of the spell is reduced by half, making the casting time of the magic bullet only 0.05 seconds. Also, EMP is doubled to 200%, reducing the cost of the spell by 50%. The boy began to mercilessly attack the master with all his strength. The man flew closer to the trees, rolling on his back. At this time, the main character was holding 2 pistols, which he pointed at Ansa. The sweat drained from the main character's face, but Ans lay motionless on his back, doing nothing and getting up. Smoke came out of the barrel, and the hero decided to approach his teacher. He lay motionless on the cold ground, his face twisted in horror. The boy decided to touch his master with his finger and check his pulse. He touched it and absolutely nothing happened. It was then that the hero realized that he had gone too far and had inflicted too much damage on Ansu. 2 weeks passed. Ans said goodbye to Sky, saying that it was time for him to go now. The master praised the hero, saying that he had shown himself well in battle, thanks to which he had slept for a whole week. But the man did not accept the apology, but only admired the speed of the main character's magical transformation. Sky listened in admiration as Ans praised him for his good speed, which was 0.5 hundredths per second. After this, the hero extended his hand to the young man to shake it. To say something, the master suggested that they meet again, and after these words his face lit up with a bright smile. Sky agreed to the meeting and firmly shook the man's sinewy hand. The hero looked after his teacher who had given him everything and was now leaving him. 6 years later, 15-year-old Sky took out 999 in the mana dimension. And because his mana didn't exceed 1,000, he officially became a BB level mage. After that, as the son of a count's family, he was sent to a famous magic academy. The hero had grown and changed a lot. Now he was studying at the academy. Suddenly, the young man asked about what counterattack he could not be excluded for. A year ago, before the entrance ceremony to the Magic Academy, Vincent's mansion, Sky stood in front of his father's desk, looking into his eyes. With his hands clasped over his wrinkled mouth, the father declared that his son had grown a lot since he had seen him. Then the main character irritably replied that all this was due to the fact that the man did not pay attention to him. The father stated that his son would most likely not be able to cross the 1,000 mana before his 15th birthday next year. The man sighed heavily, saying that he didn't want the whole world to know about his son, but Sky would have to study at a magic academy. The Magic Academy is the best institution in this country for magical education. Aristocrats and talented commoners who are magicians attend this academy. Sky suddenly rebelled, saying that it was stupid to send his son to a school where only aristocrats studied, because it was a disgrace to the family. The father stated that the main character would be sent there as the second son of the family, Sola. Then the guy realized that if something happened to Sol's successor, Sky would be the backup option. The hero sighed heavily and began to make a decision. He replied to his father that he refused because he saw no benefit for himself. But his father tried to persuade him, saying that he was sorry for disowning him then. Now Sky had to think of it as a family matter and attend school. Clenching his fists, the main character screamed loudly, not believing that his father dared to cook about it like that now. The young man remembered himself as a little boy who was abandoned to his fate. Turning around and getting ready to leave, the hero declared that he did not feel it was his duty to help the family. Suddenly, the father jumped up and decided to make some kind of advantageous offer to his angry son. He was willing to give 1/3 of the family territory to the boy, even after the successor inherited the family property. The old man said that even if he refused, the father would have to force his son to do it, but he did not want to go too far. The young man stopped in front of the exit and thought deeply about his father's words. He was promised 1/3 of Vincent's family's territory. The hero saw in these words a rather good offer and a favorable condition for cooperation. Besides, he could make a name for himself if he were to graduate from a magic academy. The hero would have many opportunities after graduation. Besides, the count's family, even if it is rotten, will be problematic if they interfere in his life. Then the main character decided to agree to all the conditions that his father left for him. Sky said that he would enter the academy for his sake, but there would be one but. His father should not interfere with him when the main character is in the mansion after graduation. The man laughed and waved his hands joyfully, saying that this was exactly what he wanted. The gray-haired hero gave the departing hero some advice. If he doesn't want to get involved with aristocrats, then he shouldn't show off. After this, the hero left his beloved father's office and went out into the corridor. But the man's last words did not surprise the boy at all. He knew it very well. Some time passed and the hero went out into the street. In a shady place among the trees, loud shots from 2 pistols began to be heard. Sky stood on the defeated monster, lowering his weapon. The boy couldn't come to his senses and screamed loudly, getting upset at his dad, who was constantly bothering him. After this, the hero dragged 2 huge bears behind him, thinking that his father had not even managed to provide him with money. The hero arrived at the Adventurers Guild, bringing them 2 huge brown bears. One of the women couldn't believe how Sky defeated 2 A-class monsters in one day, but the hero was a record holder for defeating a Yeti. The boss looked at the guy with admiration, saying that it was not a mistake to give him a gold card. Today, the young man received an award and a gold card, which was given to him for his high achievements. Everyone around looked at the hero with admiration, not believing that at such an age he had already received a gold card. A joyful Sky walked past the whispering boys, not thinking about their words. One of the girls also noticed him and whispered something, when suddenly she decided to come up and say hello to the young man, who looked at her in surprise. The girl introduced herself as Arietta Tungaloi. She was from a family of marquises, and from this year she would be attending the Magic Academy. Taking a gold card out of her pocket, the heroine also noted that at their age, having a card is a subject for discussion. Arietta bombarded Sky with questions. She concluded that if the guy had defeated 2 monsters, he must have been very experienced. The young girl was interested in the guy's name and whether he would study with her at the Magic Academy. But the guy replied that he didn't want to tell her his name. This offended Arietta, who in turn greeted him first. She said that they might be in the same class and that she would find out his name sooner or later. The hero was surprised by the division into classes. The girl began to explain that the classes at the Magic Academy were divided based on skill level. The main character didn't think that this would happen sooner or later, but she will still find out everything. The guy introduced himself with his real name, and Arietta exclaimed upon learning that he was from a count's family. Suddenly she asked a question about how much mana the hero had. The main character looked at her in confusion and began to think what to answer her. He was amazed that she knew absolutely nothing about him, because the nickname BB class was quite well known from the count's family. Looking at her again, Sky thought that the girl was very strange. The heroine came closer to him, saying that he was hiding the amount of his mana, which meant that he was very careful. She spread her hands, noting that they would most likely be competing for the best student post. And Arietta put her finger to her lips, declaring that she would look forward to it. The girl loudly declared that she had never met a worthy opponent before, and she was really excited that he finally appeared in front of her. She waved her hand at him, saying that they would meet again soon. Arietta immediately fluttered away from Sky, leaving him with his thoughts. The hero looked after her with confusion and did not understand what the hell was going on. The leaves, torn from the tree by the wind, distracted the boy's attention and rushed past. Finally, the day came for the main character and other students to enter. The character left the card on the nightstand and left the room. The card was lying unfolded, where all the data was visible. It stated that the amount of mana was 999, and the amount of magic was 100%. Taking the above results together, it was decided that Sky would be classified as Class E. This is exactly what the hero expected. He knew that he would end up in Class E. The boy thought that students could use 14 or 15 spells on average. Many people stared at the main character through the glass, saying that this was the same BB magician. However, the guy himself did not expect this. He was terribly irritated by such attention to himself. The young man's face was distorted into an angry grimace. He understood that perhaps the hooligans would start to bother him, which would naturally be annoying. The people behind the glass said that, in addition to Sky, many outstanding people entered the school this year. Arietta alone had 28,000 mana by her 15th birthday. This is a lot even for the legendary wizards in history. At this time in Class A, this girl was looking for Sky, not understanding where he had gone. People were discussing another girl, pointing at her. She is the 6th daughter of the former king. Her name is Lady Sophia Nasher. Due to her weak constitution since childhood, she decided to be classified as Class E. The boys laughed sarcastically, saying that if she were in their class, they would support her. They admired her kind and sweet face. The girls smiled at them. Both boys became embarrassed and looked after her. Suddenly, Sophia turned towards Sky, and a light blush lit up her sweet face. The guy looked at the girl with confusion and did not understand why she was looking at him like that. Sky stretched and yawned loudly, but the Lord continued to look at him. Boring days passed at the academy. They were no different from each other. On the first day, Sophia could still turn her miniature head towards the guy and look at him. On the 7th day, she also looked at him, not daring to say anything. It was also on the 14th day of his stay at this academy. Sky was puzzled why he was receiving so much attention from her. Suddenly her face flashed before his eyes again, but much closer. The heroine mumbled something indistinctly, attracting the attention of the guy who was distant from her. Sophia said that she wanted to discuss something with the main character after school. Looking down, she said that she would wait for him behind the school building. This left the main character a bit confused. The lady moved away from him and sat down in her place, leaving the hero alone with his thoughts. He sincerely did not understand how he could attract the attention of a royal person. The guy didn't believe that the girl would confess her love to him. He thought about what she wanted from him. Finally, all the lessons ended, and the girl left the huge school building. She sighed heavily, waiting to meet the main character. The heroine arrived at the male dormitory of the Magic Academy. Sophia walked to the guy's room number. The number written on the sign was 67. There was a loud and piercing knock on the door in Sky's room. This made the guy lose his temper and he jumped up. The hero looked out the door, not understanding who could have come to see him. Standing in front of his door was Sophia, who smiled when she saw the main character's displeased face. She reminded him of the invitation she had given him to come to the back of the school building after school, but Sky immediately dismissed her words, saying he didn't think anything would come of it. The hero asked the girl if she really wanted to explain herself and how she wanted it to happen. The guy was saying that he wasn't going to take her words face down. The girl's face twisted into a surprised expression. A crimson blush appeared on her cheeks. The young man was surprised and asked what she wanted from him then. Suddenly he realized what the matter was. Sky smiled and asked the heroine if this was really a confession, but she said that it was simply impossible. The guy was surprised by these words and looked at her questioningly. Sophia, in turn, was scared by how loudly she screamed. She suggested that they forget about it, since the conversation was going in a stupid direction. The lady pouted and announced that she had an announcement for him, Sky Vincent. The girl placed her gentle hand on the pair and declared that this was exactly how it was. With a smile, the heroine declared that she was Ansa's best student, Lancelot. The guy looked at the girl herself and her contented look with incomprehension. He expected some kind of explanation, but Sophia stood in front of him, smiling broadly. Sky wondered why the heroine suddenly said his master's name. The lady said that she joined Class E for one reason, and that was to declare war on Vincent. The guy himself thought that it was because of his weak constitution. The heroine confirmed the words of the main character, noting that this is a story from her childhood. The master was always with Sophia, like a doctor. The girl learned the correct information about magic from him. The main character listened to all this in shock, not believing his ears. Sophia continued, saying that as soon as he returned from his trip, he spoke only of Sky. This irritated the girl very much because it made the girl's life very restless, which made her even more ill. And after that, she finally met Sky Vincent, who seemed completely ordinary to Sophia. The guy was surprised by these words and suddenly asked how Ansa was doing, but the girl screamed at the young man not to say his name so casually. She pointed her finger at him, telling him to listen to her carefully. Sophia Nasher said with a smile that Master Ans belonged only to her. The girl said that she had reached 93% of the speed of magical transformation. This means that she may soon become a legendary legless, but for now only Sky has the teacher's attention. The heroine desperately believed that she would also soon receive attention from Master Ansa. So for now the guy can enjoy his short-lived superiority over her. After that, the girl loudly slammed the door. Everyone saw Mrs. Sophia leave the men's dormitory, and no one understood what she was doing there. Sky collapsed onto his bed, feeling extremely tired. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. The hero thought that the girl's complaints were not over yet. He burst out loudly, not wanting to see her on the threshold again. The guy suddenly looked down at the floor and saw something. Someone put a note under the door telling him to come behind the school as quickly as possible. Then a smile appeared on the main character's face. The young man was ready to inflict serious damage on the one who sent him this note. After some time, loud and aggressive shouts could be heard behind the school. The blonde guy was yelling loudly at Sky, saying that he was late and made him wait. But the main character also shouted, saying that the area behind the school was very large and that his enemy should have been more precise. He pointed his finger at the main character, saying that he was very impudent and his character had not changed in 5 years. Then Sky stated that he didn't know who was talking to him. How could he know whether his character had changed or not? The enemy's head shook and he shouted that he would not let the boy forget who Balangalak was, and he asked Sky to look at his chin, which was bent over by his magical attack. The protagonist noted that he doesn't know this guy, but he believes that the Luck family has been like this through generations. Balanga pointed his finger at him, shouting that he would not allow him to talk and behave like that. After all, Lack had been training hard for the last 5 years, and this time the guy wouldn't be able to get to him with his pathetic tricks. But Sky suddenly declared that violence was prohibited on school grounds, to which the fair-haired guy said that his friends would be witnesses. The enemy said that the main character would be to blame for this, since he started a fight with him. But the guy himself had evidence against Balanga, who left a note signed by him. The enemy began to boast that he had reached 12,000 in mana this year and could use 56 different spells. To this, Sky said that the best student is the one who has reached 28,000 mana. This news greatly shocked the fair-haired aristocrat. Suddenly, Balanga's friend began to calm him down, saying that this year was unusual and that on average, students had 10,000 mana. The enemy gritted his teeth in an aggressive grin because the protagonist had humiliated him. After all, he hasn't even reached 1,000 mana, but he can still mock him. Sky replied that he wasn't laughing at him because he didn't think the amount of mana was that important. Then Balanga decided to use his staff against the guy, and in his hands was a large trident, which he pointed towards the main character. The guy saw that it was a rod made of pure gold and realized that it looked pathetic. The fair-haired guy noted that he had a great affinity with his staff, which increased the power of a ski by 1 3/10. The young man shrugged his hands, saying that his coefficient increased by 2.5 times. Balanga was very angry when he heard that he was not superior to anyone or anything. Sky stated that he would like to live a peaceful life if possible, but he was not ready to give in to anyone who started a fight with him. The main character became irritated by his opponent's boasting, and he took out his staff in the form of a weapon. Asking Balang to hurry up, the boy loaded his weapon. Anger filled the enemy from head to toe, and he bared his teeth. Balanga pointed his trident at him, saying that the young man had played enough. A seal appeared in front of the enemy, and he declared that there was no turning back. Looking at the hero choosing a starting magic spell, namely a sequential water bullet, the guy realized that the spell time was 1 second. Although Sky didn't know what his magical transformation speed was, but the hero had 1 second, and this was enough for him to attack the enemy. His chin sagged and Balanga fell. The main character himself noted that it is still slow. The friends jumped up to their wounded friend and surrounded him from all sides. Someone was on the roof of one of the buildings and watched what was happening. His face was not visible, but the stranger had blonde hair and a sly grin. Someone quickly slipped across the roof, not wanting to be noticed. The next day came, which was filled with many new situations. Everyone was walking around and chatting about something. Someone at school started a new rumor. Suddenly, Sky heard the words that someone had defeated Balanga. This greatly amazed the young man. The main character perked up, not understanding how everyone found out about this because the enemy himself could not, since it was shameful. But it was precisely because of this that no one else started a fight with the main character, which was very convenient for him. But peaceful days certainly did not come for Sky, for Sophia was constantly walking along him, piercing him with an evil look. She hated the main character, and every time she pierced his figure with an inquisitive and hateful look. Despite this, the guy could now live peacefully, without paying attention to anyone. Ate calmly and no one sat down next to him or bothered him. Life seemed too perfect for Sky, no one bothered him and he could relax peacefully in his bed. After some time, the character was walking around the schoolyard and stretching, thinking about something of his own. The young man wanted to take a walk in the forest, because he had not been there for quite a long time. Suddenly, loud cries reached him that someone was looking at something. The hooligans surrounded the little boy and accused him of some kind of ridicule and bullying, although he did absolutely nothing. They surrounded the poor fellow, shouting loudly at him and not giving him the right to run away. Sky didn't like this at all, and he didn't want to watch this situation. They wanted to use magic against the poor boy who begged them to stop, but their opponents were relentless. Balanga decided to use the stone ball's destruction when suddenly something happened. Was shot in the back and was unable to attack the boy. At this time, Sky stood behind the wall and was not noticed by the group of teenagers. Everyone thought that this little boy had done something to their leader. After that, Sky fired a few more times, wanting to finish off the whole company. The other two remained lying on the floor, while the little boy was able to escape from the hands of the hooligans. He looked at what he had done with admiration and moved on. But instead of the forest, the hero preferred to take a nap in his room. Sky headed to the boy's dorm. Suddenly, someone deliberately touched his hand, wanting to stop the main character. The guy slipped away from them and looked to see who was heading his way and who touched him on the shoulder. The sweat drained from the hero's face because he didn't understand when these two managed to approach him. Looking at them, the young man also wondered how long they had been behind him. The girl suddenly told Sky not to be so wary. She was interested in how the main character did it, because for some reason she didn't understand it at all. But even the guy himself did not understand what they wanted from him. The girl spoke of the spell he used to knock out those aristocrats. Sky smiled widely, declaring that he did not understand at all what the stranger was talking about. Realizing that the guy was leading her on, she replied that it wasn't that important. The heroine introduced herself as Surun Historia, and she was the student council president. Ranger was her escort, Kest, who held the position of vice president. It was Kest who saw Sky fight with Balanga. The vice president said that the guy had a very interesting ability, so Surun kept an eye on him for a while. Sweat broke out on the protagonist's face when he realized that they had been following him from the very beginning. Although the young man himself was unable to notice them during all this time, the guy smiled, asking if they should have intervened in the situation earlier. But Surun replied that that's why they are the student council, because they monitor discipline in the school. She knew Vincent would deal with these hooligans, but she was most interested in the guy's spell. The head of the student council understood that Sky had no desire at all to tell her about this. And the hero confirmed her words, smiling widely. The girl smiled and looked at the guy. She realized that she would have to use a little force to get Sky to tell her everything. The young man reached for his magic wand, not wanting to fall under anyone's influence. He stood in front of them, not wanting to say or do anything. Then Surun told him about the situation of the Magic Academy, point 20. And the main character's eyes widened when he heard this. He was told that using magic in individual battles without permission was punishable by punishment. Ranger witnessed the boy using his staff. Suddenly, Sky said that it was unfair because they also used their wands and he couldn't be the only one punished. Zoran agreed with the guy's praises. After all, both their world and the student council are extremely unfair. She agreed not to punish the guy and to deal with the rest later. The girl promised that she would not do anything bad if Sky followed her if she wanted to stay at the academy. The hero remained silent, displeased, looking towards both boys. He realized that his actions had attracted the attention of some splinters. After some time, the main character was already in the student council room. All three sat at the table and looked at each other, remaining silent. Surun folded her arms and stated that she had a proposal for the main character. All this time, Sky sat with his hands folded across his chest and looked at those present with displeasure. Suddenly, the girl suggested that the hero join the student council. This completely knocked the guy out and he looked at her in shock, not believing the leader's words. According to the rules, 3 students had to be chosen by the student council, and now Sky was being offered one of those spots. A guy will have many advantages if he joins the student council. He will receive a favorable attitude. The rule using magic also does not apply to council members. The student council is the center of the Magic Academy. This is a very convincing proposal. Surun looked at the guy again, waiting for his answer. Suddenly, he declared that he had no desire whatsoever to work in such a suspicious place. But despite this, the main character already stands out too much. And that's why Sky wouldn't want to be pushy by refusing the offer. After all, if he can calmly graduate from this academy, then he will say goodbye to his honor and receive a third of the territory. Therefore, the hero does not want to destroy his peaceful life by entering into such a prominent position. Suddenly, the heroine became thoughtful. She noted that if he is given 1/3 of the territory, then that would be very strange. Surun herself knows the territory will be inherited in 10 years, then it will go to the second son, following the summons sent to the royal family. The girl thought that the guy had made a huge mistake. Sky began to remember the words of his father, who promised him 1/3 of the entire territory. Even if Sol inherits the family property without incident, part of it will be his. The main character became even more angry at his father for deceiving him. But even after that, Sky didn't agree to go to the student council, because then he would simply say goodbye to this school life. The young man saw no benefit from studying, so it was easier for him to finish his studies. Surun agreed with the guy. Then she asked the hero if he was underestimating the power of the Vincent family. After all, then they will simply force him to attend the academy if something happens to the heir. And then if Sky were to drop out, their dignity would take a hit, meaning it would be difficult for them to find a successor for the Vincent family, which will lead to the Count's great anger. Then the main character thought for a moment and replied that he didn't care about their anger. He was ready to deal with anyone who stood in his way, and his staff would help him in this. But the hero really had to try to present the threat coming from the angry Count's family. The character will then be drawn into a nasty war between him and his family. Surun also added that this is far from Sky's desire to live a peaceful life. After this, the main character asked if they really wanted him to stay at the academy, and both confirmed this. She also promised the girl that she would give him everything he wanted if he joined the student council. The Historia family is one of the 3 dukedoms of the Kingdom of Nashor. The Count Vincent family has great influence, but the Historia family has a more majestic power. Surun waited for an answer from Sky, who was thinking about something. And then he said that her promise was only in words, to which the girl replied that they would sort out the documents later. The guy was interested in why the girl wanted him to join the council so much. And Suran replied that he was very interesting. She promised him many privileges and opportunities upon joining the council. The girl herself did not see any downsides at all. The boy and the girl looked at each other, waiting for the final decision. Then Sky asked what she wanted the guy to do. The heroine said that she had a job for him. Suran wanted the main character to control the students with her mysterious magic just like today. The sweat drained from the guy's satisfied face because control does not apply to peaceful life. Zoran agreed with this and touched his chair. They received exactly 59 complaints last year for magic-related violence. The girl walked away from the hero, asking him if he had seen what happened today. The hero looked at her in surprise. Zoran spoke about the aristocrats uniting and bullying the weaker residents. After all, this academy is simply a mirror of today's society. After all, even Sky himself hated the scene he saw today. But the hero replied that it happened simply on a whim and not out of a sense of justice. The girl thought the opposite because the guy did it for a completely different reason. She thought that perhaps his essence had forced Sky to act. Zoran continued to convince the boy that he simply had to join the student council. Because a capable person must give in a position where he can hone his abilities further. The heroine herself thought that the student council was the most suitable place where the hero could show all his abilities. It was at that moment that Sky chose to be a slave to the father who promised a lie. Or choose a new path where much that is new and successful awaits him. The guy thought deeply and hung his head. He pulled at the bracelet that was only worn by those who were members of the student council. After that, the guy firmly said that he would become part of the student council, but he promised that he would immediately leave it if he got bored. At the next meeting, they had to choose the familiar that was most suitable. But many only paid attention to the fact that the main character was wearing a student council armband. Sky expected this reaction, so he stood at a distance, detached, watching the process. Everyone was talking very loudly, and they tried to calm them down. The man on the stage announced the beginning of the election of a familiar more suitable for the students. Many people wanted to vote for the dragon because it was so strong and there was no reason to choose anything else. After this, the head decided to distribute the tools that were needed for the contract. While someone in the crowd was deciding whether the dragon could win, suddenly a gray-haired man called out to Sky Vincent. He was asked what kind of familiar he wanted, and the protagonist thought deeply. And to this, the guy replied that he wanted a humanoid magician. They are familiars of the fairy tale type. First of all, Sky knew that familiars do not live in this world and they live in the kingdom of the poles, from where they are summoned to this world. They are completely subordinate to the contractor and cannot harm people at will. If they are injured during a fight, spending 2 or 3 days in the spirit realm will completely restore them. And they also won't die as long as their contractor is alive. The hero prepared to begin the ritual of summoning his own familiar. The hero began to concentrate in order to perform the entire contract ceremony correctly. To begin, Sky had to drop a drop of his blood onto the plate. After this, it was necessary to round it with your magic. Suddenly, a bright and piercing light illuminated the main character. The guy tried to see at least something through the bright rays. From there, various parts of the body of his personal familiar began to appear. At some point, a leg appeared, and a second later, the main character had a creature that resembled a small tame clown. The young man thought that he had acquired a familiar that was too cute. The creature greeted its new owner. The magician's ability was to create tricks. He could cause all sorts of changes by adding conditions to magic spells. Hearing the loud male voice of his creature, Sky realized that he was not cute at all. The guy realized that the creature was just perfect for his style, if you don't take into account the color of the creature's appearance and ability. The clown asked when Sky would like to see the familiar's abilities, in this room or one-on-one. The hero replied that he didn't want to be in public, and the creature disappeared, noting that it was not interesting at all. After this, the main character noted that his creature was very annoying. After all this, the character was in class. When they were over, he hurried back to the dorm and continued the contract ceremony. Suddenly, a sign appeared on the board telling Sky to go to the student council room after school. And the young man thoughtfully scratched his back, not understanding what was happening. One of the students asked the guy who he was to show off like that. But these words only irritated the main character even more. Suddenly, a classmate said again that Sky was being too selfish because the teachers were using the board. The blonde boy believed that Sky's ego soared when he joined the student council. The main character just looked at his enemies with irritation. Not wanting to respond to the aggression, the character stated that it was his mistake and he would know. The blonde classmate started to pick on Sky, saying that he didn't like him from the start. Then the character realized that his life would never be calm and quiet, when suddenly he heard that this young man had deigned to challenge him to a fight. He asked Sky if he knew what official duels were, but the guy didn't know. The classmate was not surprised and began to call other kids to listen to him. He began to talk about his brother and the academy, what he knew himself and from hearsay. The guy said that they would now be allowed to duel with an opponent of their choice once a week. And if someone wins, they will add a point to their scorecard. Everyone rebelled and started saying that everything was correct and the decision was made only based on the test. A classmate said that he intended to win official matches in order to raise his level. The blonde boy pointed his finger at Sky, saying that he wanted to defeat the one who barely became a member of the student council. The opponent was ready to force the guy to vacate this place if he won, to which the main character agreed, although he understood that it was not up to him to decide. Suddenly, a blonde girl walked past him and said that she would vote for him. But many voted for Tatsu, not Sky, and raised their hands. Addressing him as the legendary Lagless, the girl asked him if he would lose. And then the hero replied that he definitely would not lose. Smiling, she agreed with him, saying that she would look forward to it. After this situation, Sky headed to the student council room. Suran apologized to the hero for calling him so abruptly. She really wanted to introduce the guy to some people, so she invited him here. Introducing Empty Gyuralg, Suran said that he is a second year and is very capable. Pust shook the protagonist's hand, saying that he had heard about him from the president and would like to get along with him. After that, the head introduced another girl, who was much younger than Empty. Her name was Rime, and she was a first year who had just become a member of the student council today. She smiled, saying that she wanted to get along with him, Sky. The heroine smiled broadly, saying that he became a member long before her. The girl squeezed his hand tightly. The heroine shook his hand very lightly, but it was quite painful for Sky. Suran said that Rime is a very kind and honest girl, but now she is a little angry because the girl made a mistake in the recruitment order. After all, Rime is a commoner who lives in her family's territory, Historia. Looking at her, the main character realized that she was very angry. Suran reported that the girl had achieved incredible strength since childhood, and when she entered the academy, the head promised her that she would send her to the student council. But the girl made a mistake and allowed Sky to enter first, and this is what angered the girl. Then the main character suggested that the girl make a contract with the familiars today. And she agreed, but other than that, she would not receive any privileges if she joined the council first. Suddenly, the girl looked at him angrily, and pointing her finger at him, she asked if he would try to test his powers as a full-fledged magician. The guy already knew about official duels, so he decided not to ask Suran about it. Rime declared that she would completely destroy the hero and his crazy magic. But Sky just chuckled because he had only heard this recently. Both heroes looked at each other angrily. Suran asked the boys to become normal friends with each other, but they were against it. Entering his room, the main character complained about the girl who declared a duel with him. But deciding to forget about it, Sky focused on the contract with his magician familiar. At that very second, he emerged from his hole and greeted his master. The creature stated that the only thing it could do was perform miracles and failures. It could do something interesting. This suited the main character, and then he asked what he could call a familiar. He shook his head and said that the guy could call him whatever he wanted. After this, the hero decided to simply call him Clown, but the magician did not see any difference. The guy said he wanted the clown to perform some kind of miracle with magic bullets. Sky knew the creature could make a miracle or a disaster. Then the clown noted that he knew about the guy's magic. The magician claimed that someone like Sky was the first to use special magic. The young man asked if there were any limitations in the formation of the creator of tricks, but he was told that there was no limit. The clown demanded that the protagonist state his request. The main character asked if his bullet could destroy the entire earth, and the clown replied that it was possible. Surprised, the young man asked what the compensation would be, and then the magician offered to send the guy to another world as payment. The scale of the discussion amazed the main character, who wanted to do nothing. The creature said that she would not do it even if the boy begged. It was then that Sky realized that the magician could do it, but it would not become reality until he admitted it himself. The clown lay down on the candlestick and sighed heavily. Then the main character looked at this with a smile. The hero decided to increase the power of the magic bullet spell. The creature was surprised because isn't this the ability of dragons, but the hero shook his head. The clown agreed to do it, and the guy said that he achieves a value of 1,250 times, which is higher than the power of an advanced spell. He was about to do this when suddenly, the young man covered his mouth with his hand. Sky understood that his power would increase, but he didn't understand what would be required of him as compensation. The creature only moaned, trying to say something, and then the boy took his hand away from his face. The clown told the hero to continue. The protagonist asked him to increase the strength in steps, and then the collapse would be less extreme. He also wanted to add some conditions to increase strength. The clown's task became more and more difficult, and he noted that fearing failure was the right idea. The hero also wanted to improve the magic bullet's hit rate on the protagonist. If the opponent's magic hits him or he physically blocks it with defense, Sky wants him to hit her directly. This was an unusual concession. If a normal bullet had been absorbed, then a hit would have occurred. The clown listened to all this with rapture, telling the main character to just continue. Sky also noted that the hit rate would be 10%, but the original spell power of 500 remains the basis. One hit will increase it to 550, but the second hit will also increase the power to the same extent and reaches 600. The hero also added information about increasing the power. The upper limit will be equal to 2,000. It was then that the creature began to think seriously about it. And then he added that it seemed Sky had finished explaining and now it was time to answer. He thought about it, wondering what he should do. A spark and hope flashed in his eyes. The clown said that the guy had a very good nickname. Walking around the table, he spoke about how the hero was called a wizard with a weak stomach. Although in reality he was just a BB mage and thought that familiars knew everything about their contractors. The creature agreed and decided to say something in the man's ear. He asked the hero if he had gone through so much because of a small amount of mana. Then the clown decided that he would make this lack of mana even more painful by setting the conditions that if the magic bullet hits the enemy, the power of the spell will increase by 10%. But if the guy misses, the magic bullet will cost 10% more. And if she is stunted by the enemy, then it will be considered a miss. The main character thought about this seriously. Then Sky realized that the clown was aiming for a seriously painful spot. Then the main character agreed that the magic bullets were ready. The clown smiled widely and the trickmaker formed a formation. His familiar said goodbye and told the boy to call him again if anything happened. After this, the hero thought that he had chosen a really interesting character. Very interesting to him. The next day came. Sky drank juice from his bottle. It turned out to be really tasty because it was created for the members of the school council. There are only a few days left until the official duel. The guy saw a quarrel between two guys who were loudly discussing something. The young man decided that he would not interfere because it did not concern him. Suddenly, a girl's voice was heard behind him, saying that those students told their friends that they had gone to the Adventurers Guild. The main character choked on his juice when he saw a girl in front of him. She also said that the student council president had given them a job and that tomorrow they would go and look for those second years. The girl asked the guy what was wrong with his facial expression, but the young man just waved it off, saying that he would do anything for this grain juice. Sky sighed heavily. After this, both heroes set off on their mission. Rime asked Sky to keep up. The heroes descended a long staircase. Sky didn't understand why they were looking for the missing fruits, but the girl remained silent. Suddenly, the young man looked at her, and he saw her sword behind her back, realizing that it was a staff. Her staff was in the form of a sword, capable of cutting into pieces and used in close combat. The guy thought that she probably had an affinity suitable for close combat, like light and earth. The hero's gaze was deeply puzzled. He called out to Rime, but she understood him. At that very second, she drew her sword. The handle of the sword was covered with pleasant leather. Her affinity with light is a medium spell, and the casting time is 3 seconds. Sky was very surprised. He found it very impressive. Her magical transformation speed was 80%. Rime herself stated that after strengthening her staff becomes 10 times sharper for 3 minutes. She didn't want to hurt the hero, so she told him to stay out of the way. The young man wanted to see what the girl was made of. Suddenly, a kobold appeared in their path. Rime sighed heavily. She began to use the initial magic skill and move at the speed of light. The girl wielded her sword perfectly. This delighted the main character beyond measure. Sky noted that the girl was indeed very skilled in handling a sword. He looked at her as if she were the strongest girl. The heroine herself stated that many magicians are the same, but too slow. After all, no matter how strong the spell is, it is useless against the girl. Rime was annoyed that the guy himself did nothing, and then the hero took his staff from his belt. The guy shouted that it didn't matter how many people attacked him. The girl looked at her opponent with fierceness. She struck the kobold with fierce brutality, but he just stood in front of her. A large bloody hole suddenly appeared in his chest, and the creature fell down dead. Rimmel looked at this questioningly because she couldn't kill him. But Sky himself killed the creature by firing a gun. He smiled and said that he wasn't particularly slow either. This caused confusion on the girl's face. The heroine moved on, continuing to intrigue the guy. She was upset that Sky killed the monster himself. Rimmel realized that her spells were much faster. Moreover, killing a kobold requires an above-average spell. The girl really wanted to know the secret of this shot. But both heroes continued to move deeper. In front of them was a magic circle indicating the boss. Both characters looked at it questioningly. Rimmel didn't want anyone to get here. A huge pig appeared on their way. They walked past dead people. Then the heroes realized that this was the Orc King. There were second-year students lying on the ground. The creature was not ready to attack the guy while he was in the tunnel. Sky said that the Orc King had over 1,000 health. The girl was very irritated that the hero was being smart. Then the guy said that the creature was no obstacle to them. Sky decided to summon his familiar. He called him by name, and then Rimmel did the same. Two familiars looked out from another world. A huge bird appeared from the hole. It was a thunderbird that had the ability to increase its movement speed. But the guy noted that the creature looked like an ordinary chicken. The girl told the hero to stop talking nonsense, and they decided to start a fight against the orcs. Suddenly the boss heard something. He looked around in surprise and almost fell. In his path stood two heroes, pointing weapons against him. The girl then called her familiar. Standing in front of the boss, some energy waves began to appear around Rimmel, and suddenly a huge explosion was heard. The girl fought desperately. She tried to wear the boss down. The pig's face was distorted into a terrible grimace. He also tried to attack the main character, but he dodged well and attacked the creature. Sky used the hit or miss he had agreed upon with Clown. The mutant's gaze wandered from the girl to the boy, who continued to beat him. Numerous shots were heard, and because of this the orc boss flew back, because Sky dealt him a strong blow. The guy himself looked questioningly at everything that was happening. The pig was furious, but the young man continued to use spells against him. The creature itself used a magical reflection that inflicted enormous damage on the attacker. It was a foolhardy spell for an orc king, that's what the protagonist thought. The young man thought about how to destroy the evil boss, and then he decided to continue shooting at open places. The heroine helped Sky. Suddenly, both of them stopped, seeing that the creature began to cast a spell. The mutant decided to use waves of darkness, and besides, his magical reflection was supposed to last for 10 seconds. Sky knew that they wouldn't be able to defeat him in 1 second, and they wouldn't be able to escape either. They decided to take a risk and attack the evil creature, because if they didn't try, they would die. The heroine knew about this. She used a magic swing. 10 seconds passed, and the magical reflection was activated. A wave of darkness struck the creature with its power. The heroes continued to attack. Sky continued to shoot at the body of the orc boss, and the heroine used a magical swing. The creature's pupils opened wide. The main character shot at the already wounded pig. At this time, the bodies of the second years were still lying on the ground. Sky wanted to block the creature's movements, and Rimmel needed to kill it. Many more shots were heard. The main character did not stop. The girl attacked the orc boss, and the main character decided to give her this victory. Rimmel angrily rushed towards the mutant. In a second, she cut off his head. The monster's body fell to the ground. It fell apart into many pieces. Sky looked at the defeated mutant with rapture. He thought it was too easy, but the girl herself didn't think so. The character thought so because the fight took no more than a minute. At this time, the heroine realized that her friend was not fast at all. She hung her head in disappointment. Looking at him, she realized that she had been wrong to challenge him to a duel. The girl's face darkened. Enough time has passed. The heroes walked down the street, saying that they had fought well and admired the Orc King. After Rimmel said that she donated money to the shelter, Sky replied that no one forced her to do so. Even the main character himself was capable of this. The girl understood that such a sacrifice was very unexpected. But the hero explained this by saying that he had promised to do so. After all, he was in the cafeteria before. One of the boys approached him. He really wanted to talk to the character. The stranger introduced himself under the name Asker. The boy said that he wanted to tell him something, namely, to thank for the charitable assistance to the shelter. The main character thought that he had done nothing wrong, but the children from the orphanage said that Sky gave them money after coming from the guild. And since the guy didn't need that much money, he donated it. Asker admired the guy very much. He said that he had also been to the shelter, and everyone there had only good things to say about Sky. The hero himself was glad that he helped at least someone, and he promised that he would do it again. This is exactly the promise that the main character gave to Askru. Rimen noted that the young man simply sincerely kept his verbal promise. She couldn't believe it. The heroine also wanted to give gifts to the president and visit an ice cream shop. And the money donated would have lasted for a long time. This whining really irritated the main character. Suddenly, the guy declared that he had formed an impression of the girl. If she is arrogant at school, then in reality everything is different. After all, she is the kind of person who will not abandon the weak. He called her a very kind-hearted girl. This caused a storm of emotions in Rem. She began to jump with delight, realizing that the guy really thought so. After this, the main character invited her to visit an ice cream shop at his expense. A couple of days passed. Rules for official duels and student rankings have been set. That is why the time has come for official duels. In second place was Rime, in fourth place was Balanga, and Asker in 134th. The main character understood that Rime was really very strong. Asker approached Sky, saying that he was in the very middle. The guy suddenly said that if the boy talked to him, he would put himself in a bad light. It didn't bother him. He asked Sky where the hero himself was. Asker tried to find his friend's name, but the guy himself was thinking about making money at the very end. The hero looked at the boy. He finally found where he was. Sky was in 249th place. The young man was very surprised that he was not in last place. Asker thought that the teachers saw the boy's good attitude. At this very time, Talton was angry that he was in last place. Each participant can participate in one battle per week. Students are free to enter the arena. If someone wins for 2 or 3 years, they will have a permanent audience. Rumor has it that students who attract spectators will receive special rewards. Regia Kesto was the one who attracted the most people to the duel. The day of the official fights arrived. Sky fought against Tatsu. Information about the main character was less varied than about Tatsu. His opponent had many more fighting techniques. Everyone was surprised that the young man only had 999 mana. Some people thought that the guy couldn't use magic, but only Rime screamed that Sky would win. She walked past other spectators, and after that she asked if Tatsu would admit defeat. Before this, many warned her that her rank could be lowered. But she won't be able to resist him. Nobody knew what to do with her. They really wanted to raise the main character's rank by 1 or 2. And now the young man was performing on stage. The girl looked at him desperately. The hero also paid attention to her, after which his mouth broke into a smile. Both opponents agreed to engage in combat. A magical barrier was used in the battle. He had about 20,000 defenses. Hand-to-hand combat was also possible, but attacks to the eye and crotch were not allowed. Sky decided to call a magician from another world. He came out of the hole familiarly, hitting the guy on the forehead. At this time, Tatsu summoned his familiar. It turned out to be a dragon. He couldn't attack physically, but he increased his magical power. All of yours are ready to begin the fight. Finally, the command was given that the battle could begin. The hero pointed his staff towards the enemy. Suddenly, Sky looked at his opponent with alarm. He had never seen such magic before. This means that it was the power of the dragon itself. At this time, Tatsu decided to explain everything. He said it was a holy wall that rejected any magic. But the hero himself would not be able to conjure her from his side. And then the main character decided to check it out. Tatsu was completely unfazed by the protagonist's attacks. At this time, the magician doubled the power of the magic bullet. Then the hero decided to increase his strength to 2,000. Sky wanted to test whether this wall was really invulnerable. However, he had a low mana point and did not want to drag out the fight. Tatsu left. Balanga informed him that Sky had used underhanded tactics, but because of the wall, the hero could do nothing to him. He humiliated the main character. And then the character decided to act more carefully. Tatsu had an affinity with fire, as well as a lot of strong and high-class magic. And as soon as he opens the wall, he immediately attacks. With the holy dragon and the magic glove, he is confident in his strength. The hero thought it was a good idea. However, this strategy had many shortcomings. The guy rushed towards the dome and broke through the protective wall. Tatsu never expected this. And then Sky hit his opponent very hard. After all, if the dome only protects from magic, then the main character could simply hit. And then Tatsu fell. The dragon disappeared into his hole after seeing his master's loss. Everyone around stood up and shouted loudly. And then a man ran up to Sky. He raised his hand and declared that the fight was over. The winner was Sky Vincent. Everyone thought it was cheap to use hand-to-hand combat. Many people asked for their money back. The main character just sighed heavily. The magician also decided to leave because it was a boring fight. Sky decided to leave the ring. Then Tatsu was demoted 1 rank below Sky. Everyone considered the system unfair. When the main character entered the hall, everyone started calling him a weirdo. Many said that even for a BB rank, he is simply worse. However, Rime was furious. She turned to the loudest guys. The girls said that if they had something to say, then let them say it to her. Both gossips were very scared. They rushed out of the hall. The heroine turned to the guy, saying that he had made a complete mess. She didn't understand why the hero went into hand-to-hand combat. Although it wasn't against the rules, even Rime was against it. If the hero showed his true strength, people would treat him differently. It's normal for second years to use physical force during battle, but the hero himself overdid it a lot for a first-year student. Suddenly she announced that Tatsu was very popular in E-class, and by hurting him, Sky will never be in a normal relationship with the class again. The guy also didn't understand why the hero needed a month to recover, and Rime said that he was just a weakling. The main character thought. Suddenly the guy asked about the fact that the crayfish are not katana. After all, isn't it a trick to use the speed of light and then cut the throat with a katana? And then she replied that the magical barrier would detect the use of the staff as a magical attack. Even if Rime hits someone with enhanced magic, it will only affect the barrier. Therefore, it didn't matter whether the heroine was hit in the leg or in the neck. And then the magic barrier will be dealt heavy damage. And of course the damage to the neck will be greater if you hit the neck, then the damage increases accordingly. It was written on the pages of the combat manual. The heroine decided to leave. She believed that the hero would succeed in the next battle, and Asker, together with the main character, looked after her when she insulted Sky. The boy told the main character that it was not serious. Then the young man sighed heavily. Then Asker smiled, as if he understood that this had touched the hero. A deep and starry night had arrived. At this time, the main character was reading a combat manual. Suddenly someone knocked on his door. Someone knocked desperately and the hero came out. A girl stood at the threshold and apologized, wanting to say something. Sky asked her what happened, and she screamed that she needed his help. The guy looked at her with confusion. She was rushing around the room and trying to tell him something. The young man tried to get at least some kind of answer from the girl. Suddenly, she declared that she needed Sky since he was at the top of the official fights. She said that the young man won both fights at once. Sky didn't understand this because he only participated in one fight. But as it turned out, Rime accepted defeat without even fighting him. The heroine had some connections and she found out about it. The guy asked the girl what he could help her with. She introduced herself as Fulmine, saying that she was the Baron's precious daughter. The girl said that she was studying in Class A, and she had a request for the young man. She had to win 10 times in the tournament. The heroine stood opposite the guy and looked at his angry gaze. The guy got angry at the girl. He asked her questioningly what she meant. Fulmine approached Sky with a request to help her win 10 times in the tournament. The guy stared at her in surprise. She then added that her father told her that if she couldn't win 10 victories, he wouldn't let her move on to the second year. She would have to find a good match and get married. The young man turned away, saying that it sounded cruel and was about to say goodbye to the heroine, to which she asked him to be more serious. Then she offered the perfect reward, after which she explained that she had been able to use unusual magic since birth. Long ago, a wandering magician taught her, as he himself said, forbidden magic. Sky thought forbidden magic. Anson mentioned it a little. Was it possible? He asked the girl what she could do with this forbidden magic, to which he received the answer that, simply put, these were discussions with a familiar. The hero was not impressed because his familiar was humanoid and he could talk to it anyway. However, she assured him that this was certainly not all. Then she added that with this discussion, one could reveal the familiar's hidden powers, which perhaps even he himself did not know about. It was very exhausting, so the girl rarely used it. The young man's face changed and he listened to her with genuine interest. He was glad to hear confirmation of his thought that he could extract more power in this way. Having lied, the heroine regrets that Sky is not eager to help her, clearly seeing his inspired mood. The guy responded with interest and in a slightly raised tone that he would be happy to give her advice. The top 30 winning students receive special awards from the state. But for now, Fulmine only wants 10 wins to keep his father happy. The young man asked if there was a reward she would like to receive. She asked if he knew about the familiar healer. The guy explained that when familiars get wounded, they return to their world and are completely healed within a few days. The girl chuckled. Even if he is on the student council, he has little information. Having playfully shamed him, the heroine began to explain. The healer of familiars is a job that she is trying to create. After such a tone, the guy furiously squeezed her cheeks, crying out in bewilderment. How could he know about this? Looking innocently at her interlocutor, she added that she uses her magic to heal familiars and works to resolve problems and their stress. However, demand was low, which meant failure. But if she can create this work as a special reward, then she will have the opportunity to earn money from the state. Sky noted that she was quite fixated on this issue. He understands her intentions and thinks they have made a deal. And it consists of the fact that he helps her win 10 times and in return receives the revelation of the clown's hidden power through forbidden magic. A joyful yes sounded as a sign of confirmation. The girl asked me to tell her how to win 10 times. The hero objected. He wanted a demonstration of her magic because in his opinion it sounded suspicious and he needed concrete evidence. The familiar was happy when he heard the boy. He began to call him more often. Sky wanted to know if new abilities were manifesting or if the familiar was simply strengthening its body. Having pulled his small body away a little, the guy waited for the heroine's answer. Fullman said that everything depends on the individual and will be able to find out only if he tries. Whatever it was, in the hero's opinion, it was still considered useful. He gave permission to proceed. She closed her eyes in concentration, immersing herself in her thoughts. At that moment, it seemed like the whole world around her disappeared. She pressed her hands to her solar plexus, as if searching for an internal source of strength, tuned in, and chest sounds followed. The young man watching her was full of bewilderment, not understanding what was happening. It didn't seem like she was singing. Suddenly, a ball of light energy appeared in the area of her forehead, sparkling and shimmering. She opened her eyes. The guy looked on, mesmerized. The heroine concentrated and directed the ball of energy away from herself with her finger, continuing to support it. She waved it in front of her familiar, after which she touched his small chest, placing energy there. The clown looked at him in surprise. He seemed to feel this energy penetrating him, filling him with vitality. The girl sighed with relief. That's all. The young man asked if she had awakened anything. She thought so. The hero thought. Then he asked the clown if he felt any changes, but he replied that he did not. The boy turned to his own thoughts. The familiar looks as usual, has its abilities increased. He didn't want her to know his abilities, and he wanted to try it right away, ordering the creation of a creator of tricks about a magical wave. Trickmaker, by creating a magical condition, any changes can be caused. If the condition is met, the person's abilities increase. The clown asked him what he was going to do. He wants to increase the recoil of the magic wave power 100, property empty, low-level spell, casting time 1s, used to increase the distance of opponents. Now Sky would throw someone 5m away from himself. He wants to double it with the clown. The young man thought that if nothing changed, the condition would be worth half the strength. The familiar looked at him meaningfully. Seeing how the little creature turned away, the hero decided to ask what was wrong. The clown lowered his head. Then he suggested doubling his strength. Sky was surprised. Then he awkwardly agreed. The creature stretched out its small hands to the young man's chest and began to howl. The hero leaned his hand against himself. The deal was done. It was bye-bye, fly away from the maker of tricks. Fullman looked at the boy questioningly. It doubled without demanding anything in return. So this is the power of awakening. The trickmaker suddenly became so strong. The hero offered the familiar to redo the deal about the magic bolt, to which he refused. He does not want to use the creator of tricks right now. The creature returned to its world. The young man thought awakening cost quite a lot of energy, but to think that forbidden magic was so powerful. Although it was forbidden, it sparked his interest. The girl watched the hero's satisfied face with slight fear. She asked if it worked. She received a positive answer. Now, because of her, the hero has more ways to improve magic. He is grateful to her and is ready to take care of 10 victories. Fullman is glad. First, the guy suggested that she come and watch his fight. Then she would see how to win in a magical battle. She replied that if she had no plans, she would come. The hero, raising his tone, insisted on her presence. It was the second week of official duels. The amphitheater, the stands full of spectators. On the round stage, 3 figures on the left and right sides, the duelists, between them, the leader. Right side, Sky Vincent. Class E rank 248 mana, 999 affinity, none utility, 4 types, combat data, 1 win, 0 losses. They haven't counted Ramaz's defeat yet. Left side, Larks Gozes. Class B rank 52 mana, 3400 affinity, earth utility, 21 type, combat stats, 0 wins, 0 losses. The hero noted, looking around. Quite a large crowd of people had gathered. Full of determination, he told the girl that today he would show her how to win duels and ordered her to watch carefully. She waved her hand joyfully from the stands. The host addressed the participants of the duel. They need to prepare their familiars. The clown appeared joyfully. He doesn't seem to feel tired anymore. He seems to have fully recovered. Larks's familiar is an earth dragon. Its physical and destructive power is second to none of the other dragons. The presenter asked about the young men's readiness. The battle began. Sky pulled out his pistol. The hero mentally addressed Fulman. The enemy was ready to attack. There was a dash. The dragon began to stomp around the arena. His stern gaze, even after Sky's shot, as expected, the earth dragon didn't even move. And then the hero realized, after a series of unsuccessful shots, that his opponent was using his familiar as a shield, making good use of its durability. He decides to increase the power of magic. More noise and explosions followed on the field. The duelist runs across the arena to loud sounds. Sky noticed that he didn't counterattack. For a moment, Lark stepped out of the dragon's powerful shield. Sky's keen eye caught Vincent's eye, and he spotted Lark's gozes. Taking advantage of the moment, he directed his power at the enemy. The ball of energy was heading straight for Lark's. He had time to rejoice, right on target. However, his opponent dodged at the last moment. Sky is surprised. He just stepped aside. Reddy stood in front of Sky. Behind him stood a flaming dragon. The heroes exchanged angry glances. And then the clown announced that as a punishment for 6 misses, mana usage would increase by 1.6 times. The boy thought about it. Normally, it would be impossible to avoid all of his attacks at once. That meant something. The opponent used body strengthening. Earth property, casting time is 4 seconds, increases the body's physical indicators. He managed to cast this spell in 6 seconds while Sky was attacking the dragon. So his magic transformation speed is about 70%. However, the dragon creaked. He growled ferociously as he fell. In that time, the brunette would have fired 100 times using a double spell. The blonde was amazed at how his dragon, which usually reflected 10 high-class spells, was defeated. Sky, with a cry of not looking back during the battle, instantly fired a shot at his opponent. Larks fell, clutching his injured leg. Surprised comments, "What's wrong with him? How did he fall to his knees from just one blow?" Someone from the crowd called to look at the scoreboard. It showed the blonde received 2,000 damage from just one magic bullet. It is more powerful than high-class spells. Maybe the system is broken. The defeated one was on his knees. Anger filled him, hot and uncontrollable. How could he let him from Class B lose? Lost to the insignificant VV as well. The thought of it burned like fire. Sky would like to put him down with a magic bullet. The gun, cold and dangerous, glittered like steel in his hand. But first he has to teach Fulman some tricks. The hero began to cast a spell, smoothly moving his hand through the air, drawing complex magical symbols. Larks, having recovered and gathered his strength for the attack, tried to attack the enemy once more. He assumed a fighting stance and was about to jump on Sky. But the enemy's magic entangled him like invisible chains. Every movement was difficult, as if the air around him had turned into thick syrup. Keep moving even while you cast. That's what flashed through Sky's mind. The duelists grappled. Beginners often lose because they focus too much on the spell and don't move. If you realize this, your chances of winning will increase. Sky was ready for another go. He extended his hand forward and sharply squeezed his fingers, releasing a powerful wave of magic towards his opponent. The air trembled from the concentrated energy, and under its pressure, the opponent was thrown back like a reed in the wind. The blonde fell heavily from the spell cast. A sharp pain pierced his body. The young man was filled with a cold determination, his gaze hard and merciless, leaving no doubt he would not stop. The magical impulse that reached the target dealt 200 damage. The recoil increased as well. Larks tried to get up again. Meanwhile, Sky's familiar was flirting with the girls in the crowd. The trickmaker's bye-bye, fly away actually worked. Magic Wave normally costs 50 mana. With the current 1.6x increase, it became 80. With an approximate mana consumption of 100 magic bullets, the hero had about 820 left. He realized that he could use this. Fulman watched the events in the arena attentively, because the young man showed the girl everything he wanted. There was no need to delay any further. The cold barrel of the gun, merciless and precise, was frozen in the air. The owner of the weapon had an unwavering gaze in which one could read icy confidence. The hero mentally concluded, "This is the end." The corners of his lips twitched in a barely perceptible smile, and his fingers pulled the trigger. Shots, sharp, deafening, they left a thick cloud of smoke hanging in the air, enveloping the place where the opponent stood. When the smoke cleared, the blonde lay prostrate. His body went limp. The crowd's shocked looks and Fulman's face full of joy. Sky exhaled in relief and closed her eyes. The hero takes a satisfied, enjoyable pose. The winner is announced, Sky Vincent. The hero hears noise in the stands and notes that they are talking again. But what was more important to him was that the girl understood everything. The heroine is sincerely happy about her friend's victory. He, noticing this, is confirmed she is hopeless. From the crowd, a girl called out his name with genuine happiness. Meanwhile, in the same crowd, Rime was lost in her own thoughts. Before the duel and during the battle, he kept throwing, as it seemed to her, glances. Sky, as expected, fell in love with her. The girl blushed at this conclusion. And the hero was seized with trembling. He himself does not understand why goosebumps ran over him. A guy named Tartan was always unlucky. Despite being born into a noble family when he was little, their carriage fell off a cliff. And since then, he has never seen his loved ones. But it was a blessing in disguise, for he was found and raised by a wise man who lived in the mountains. Barely surviving, the boy diligently studied magic from his mentor. He firmly believed that if he entered the magic academy, he would be able to see his family again someday. After coming down from the mountains, he quickly passed the entrance exam. Thanks to the sage's teachings, he did well in the written exam and showed himself even better in the practical one. In a battle of strength, he defeated his opponent, the teacher. It was quite impressive because out of several hundred participants, only 4 were able to do it. Of course, all 4 were accepted. Tartan, who excelled in both the written and practical parts, was confident that he would get into Class A. However, having received the letter about the assignment, the young man's face changed. He was confused. Why is he in Class E? Another student responded to this by saying that he heard that the reason was the magic that the hero used in the exam and the use of only one type of it. No matter how good your grades or mana are, if you only use one type of magic, of course you will be placed in Class E. The young man was furious. He fell to the floor of the hallway from his feelings. He lowered his head. He began to remember. He returned to the moment when he was descending the mountain. The sage warned that the magic he taught would be called forbidden by many. However, the guy didn't pay much attention to these words, hurrying to find the city and setting off on his way. The hero's blood boiled at the realization that forbidden magic was not popular. He clenched his fists. Tartan knew that they had an official combat system, but there were no rules that prohibited the use of forbidden magic. He thought he could destroy everyone with his power, but he was unlucky again. He was ranked 250th. And he was very angry about it. After all, even below the BB of the mage, how is that possible? Impossible. The worst result is him. And then he called out to Sky Vincent. He pointed his finger directly at his interlocutor, challenging him to an official fight. The latter responded calmly, even with a touch of irony. Tartan growled that he would unleash his wrath on Sky, and the two faced each other in battle. On the right is Sky Vincent, Class E rank, 198 mana, 999 affinity, none techniques, 4 types, battle statistics, 3 wins, 0 losses. On the left is Tarsan, Class E rank, 250 mana, 5600 affinity, none techniques, 1 type, battle statistics, 0 wins, 0 losses. The left side had been waiting for this day for 3 weeks. The opponent had risen in rank. The duelist was sure that if he beat him, his own rank would definitely jump up. The fight begins. Tartan is confident that he can win. He has taken a fighting stance. And I imagined it in my head. It captures all the attention that the opponent receives. And the glory will be his. He mentally saw himself on the podium, and the crowd victoriously shouted his name. And when he becomes famous, he will finally meet her. And before he could think any further, in his shining gaze, he could see the reflection of a powerful ball directed from the enemy. Sky's bullet, which flew straight to the target with lightning speed. Tartan didn't even have time to understand what had happened. The result of the duel was announced. The winner was Sky Vincent. Tartan's rank remained the same. The young man raised his gaze. The bullet continued to glow. The hero smiled. He thought this magic bullet was so fast and cool. Then the guy noticed the lit-up board. The text appeared on the screen. Following the complaints of teachers and students, Sky Vincent's magic bullet is considered a violation of the rules. Therefore, its use is prohibited in official battles. The hero was shocked. He couldn't understand how this precise and beautiful magic bullet could be against the rules. He was indignant at the students and teachers. Then it dawned on him. He smiled mysteriously. No, actually it means something. At that time, Sky was standing in front of the sign with the inscription. He was trying to figure out what was wrong with the magic bullets. Suddenly, someone brought him out of his thoughts with their advice not to get distracted by this. Turning around, the hero saw the president and Rime. The former continued her speech, explaining that when fear and envy gather in the academy, bad rumors begin to circulate. According to the president, Rime told her everything, and added that Sky was popular as always. he replied that people were just making unnecessary noise. Then the long-haired blonde asked if he hadn't been challenged to more fights and wondered if everything would be okay with him. Without thinking twice, he replied that he would refuse them. Both were surprised by his remark. She continued, because if he refused, it would be considered a defeat, knowing whether he knew about it. He said yes. The hero doesn't want to fight when the odds are slim. He didn't care about this tournament from the start. He was simply offended that he could not so confidently break the spirit of those who had called him. The blonde stated there was something wrong with him. Then the president intervened. She would try to talk to the judges about this rule and ask them not to make a scene for now. She smiled and said there are many who can put pressure on the school with their strong influence, but not as much as she does. Sky turned and headed forward. He didn't care how. He said goodbye to his interlocutors. The girls followed him with their eyes. He may say so, but the president didn't believe it. Well, we'll see. She assumed that Sir Vincent and Barango were behind this. Lace. Rime asked again if it was true. The president was almost certain. She told her friend that once she double-checked, she would try to come up with a plan. She asked her not to make a scene until then. Rime responded furiously, not understanding why she was telling her this. The president addressed, if Rime makes a bad decision, he will definitely stand out. And lately she has been talking about him a lot. Embarrassed and blushing, she began to deny it, claiming that it was not so, and continuing to walk down the corridor together, she shouted that it was not true. Room 167, Sky sat with piles of books. As expected, there was nothing about forbidden magic in the books. The hero even asked Fullman, but she couldn't answer properly. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door, and why were so many people coming into his room? Opened it, Tartan was standing there. Sky remembered he had fought him recently. He asked the guest what he wanted. Was it revenge, since he couldn't use the magic bullet anymore? He began respectfully, addressing the owner of the room. He apologized for disturbing me and said he came to help. He had a plan to cancel the ban on Sky's magic bullet that he used in the battle. The hero looked at Tartan with great surprise. Having thanked him dryly for his concern, he replied that he did not plan to fight anymore and advised him not to bother. He was about to slam the door after saying goodbye. Then Tartan indignantly, almost shouting that Sky couldn't give up just because they forbade him the magic bullet, said that he was here for this. Then he continued his thought. If he uses his forbidden magic, it might solve the problem. Sky thought about it. Seeing the sincerity in Tartan's eyes, he smiled. He let him in. I made tea for the guest, and he asked what forbidden magic he was talking about, to which the guest asked to first tell him how much Sky already knew about forbidden magic. He received the answer that he knew almost nothing. Only yesterday he saw someone using it, and that was all. The hero preferred to keep silent about Fullman. While sipping the tea offered to him, the young man said that he was sure that Sky knew someone who could use this magic. When he was hit by his magic bullet the other day, he felt a power similar to forbidden magic. Then he said he could use her. The brunette was surprised. It's called forbidden. I didn't think that the guest who came would be so open about it. Crossing his arms over his chest, he waited for more details. The interlocutor repeated that this was why he had come to him and expressed his full readiness. Tartan saw Sky's data. He was accepted with only 4 types of magic: magic wave, magic vortex, magic seal, invisibility. Magic bullet is a basic spell that everyone learns, so it is not included in this list. Then, by the way, he said that the number of his types of magic was equal to 1. Sky stared in bewilderment. He then blurted out that Tartan was lucky to have been accepted at all. He chuckled smugly, continuing that this was how the school had officially assessed him. He can certainly use more than 1 type, and the truth is that he can use more. As many as 700, he smiled evilly, his eyes sparkling. He was waiting for Sky's reaction. He looked at the guest awkwardly. He thought about it, because usually the limit for a person is 100 species. If you include the basic ones, then at most a few types are more than 100. 700 types includes all possible types. In total, he can use 700 types. It's simply impossible. Tartan chuckled again. He knows what Sky-kun is thinking. But what if he said that you can exceed the limit with forbidden magic? The voice was quiet, but every word was pierced into consciousness. Sky was all attention. His lips stretched into a slow, predatory smile. His gaze flashed with a scarlet gleam, as if that very forbidden fire was already burning behind him. Sounds intriguing. Tartan agrees. But Sky had a question. Why did Tartan want to teach him? He answered through gritted teeth, something sincere suddenly flashed in his usually mocking eyes. That he wants to become his friend. The guy fell in love with his opponent's magic bullet and was willing to do anything to help. But first, he wanted to say something else. The reason for the admiration of the magic bullet is its power, its precision. Tartan thinks it is very fast. He remembered the duel. Not only did it hit him before he could blink, he even saw Sky conjure it. His master said that there are only a few people in the world who can cast spells very quickly, and those at the top are legendary without delays. The young man continued his instruction. If you fight against no delays, you better run. Even if a miracle happens, you have no chance of winning. This is what the sage told him. Sky turned to his thoughts. Tartan knows about no delay. What a smart master. He must have been in the same circumstances as him. Tartan believes that Sky-kun can become no delay. 7 achromatic devils, only those with the void attribute can learn it. The hero agrees it is the strongest forbidden magic. Sky asked Tartan again about the name of the most powerful forbidden magic, 7 colorless demons. Yes, it is the forbidden magic of owning your own body. And if Sky does all the actions correctly and in the required order, she will be able to learn it in about a week. But according to Tartan, this is not the main thing. It takes a lot of effort to use the technology skillfully. Sky listened carefully to the guy. He had already begun to explain what the said magic was, and so the training of the new spell began. The guys meditated, read a lot of books, and studied hard. They learned fighting stances. Sky studied a lot of information, and Tartan explained everything to him. We were so tired that we lay on the ground, exhaling. And here we are, a week later at the academy. A gold ring in Sky's palm, telling him to put it on the finger of his right hand. The young man performed the action. Forbidden magic differs from other magic in that once you learn and use it, you can no longer stop. Tartan explained that in this way the hero could contain this power in the ring. And he continued his speech. If he removes the ring, he will lose the power of forbidden magic. And this spell has a rule, 1 magic for 1 person. Sky listened. He suggested that if the ring was replaced, other forbidden magic could be used. The fair-haired young coach confirmed, quite simple because only the ring changes. Then he continued the idea that because of this, there was no point in others using it because it only worked for the owner. The hero understood everything. Tartan was about to tell him the most important thing. Sky looked at him puzzled. He warned not to use 2 forbidden spells at the same time, even if there is a risk to life. And if this happens, something terrible will happen. You're going to die. Sky is stunned by the words. He was puzzled. The blonde explained that this is why there is always only 1 ring. Then you won't die a stupid death. The young man slowly lowered his gaze to the index finger of his right hand. The skin twitched slightly as if someone else's energy was pulsating underneath. And yet magic is not called forbidden for nothing. The brunette broke into a sly smile. After all, with this he changes. And it's getting stronger. He clenched his fingers into a fist. Tartan looked kindly at his friend. He stated that the training of the magic of the 7 colored demons was finished. The rest depends only on Sky. He must try. The guy nodded, closing his eyes. Then he thanked his teacher. The second one looked back in surprise. It was dinner time. Sky suggested going together. Tartan was lit up with joy and delight, and of course he agreed. The next day came. The brunette stood in the library, raking in a stack of books to study. He knew that in order to master the 7 colorless demons, he had to read various books one way or another. Having taken all the necessary things, he was about to head down the corridor impatiently when he heard someone calling him. The young man saw a familiar figure. A displeased grin appeared on his face. He saw his brother Sura, the second son of the Vincent family. He was a tall, fair-haired boy with expressive eyes. Sky's face showed no joy. He exclaimed ironically to his interlocutor how long it had been since they had seen each other, and jokingly asked why he was making him wait in such a place. Suru said that his brother's recent actions were attracting attention. He didn't believe that he was really interested, to which he received a reminder of his father's conditions for the young man to be able to move. He remembered, don't stand out and graduate calmly. Brother thought that Sky was just his replacement. Now that brother Taran has joined the royal family, Suru will support the Vincent family. But his father is afraid that his dynasty will end if something goes wrong, so Suru generously allows Sky to attend the academy. If he decides to become the heir, he will not be able, in the opinion of the elder, to bring any benefit. The blonde declared, as long as he is here, none of this will happen. He will inherit the family and lead them to prosperity. And if his brother fulfills the conditions, he will receive the territories promised by his father. He himself knew this. A promise to receive a portion of the territories, it seemed ridiculous, and as far as he knew, the territories were inherited after 10 years. He should have notified the royal family that everyone should address the second son, Vincent. Sky agreed and apologized for the attention his actions were causing. But looking maliciously, he said that, in his opinion, this would, on the contrary, help raise the prestige of the family name. Brother started to get angry. He replied that he should just accept the fact that Sky was nothing more than a cowardly wizard. And no matter what he did, it wouldn't change the fact that, in Tsuru's opinion, he was a pathetic runt. And he growled it would be better not to spread the word that the Vincent family had given birth to such a defective one. The young men looked at each other, a silent pause. He continued to explain his brilliant plan. Before the family's name thundered throughout the country, everyone in the academy would know it, and all thanks to Sir. And for this reason, he took second place in the ranking. That guy with glasses is a member of the student council and has been ranked first for 2 school years. In order to win the next election for student council president, the Vincents are aiming to rise above even the barons. He proudly declared that this year he became a representative of the faction and that it was only his business. Sky listened silently. The High School of Magic is divided into 2 factions. Although they do not differentiate between commoners and nobles and value the abilities of students, but the Surunites are a faction of absolutist aristocrats with high selection criteria. However, just in case, Tsuru has been expanding the faction for a whole year now. There is one energetic person he is going to influence in a year, the one who will take the place after him. From the first year of Class A at that moment, Sky mentally imagined Fullman, that's who is the most energetic this year. And his name is Baranga Reyes, the guy with the crazy smile. Sky was stunned by his brother's remark. Tsuru thinks that Barang has excellent data both in magical power and status. The brunette totally disagreed with him. Brother pointed his finger at him. Sky is standing in their way again. Baranga's current record is 4 battles, all victories. He is in second place in the standings despite being first in victories. Tsuru asked Sky if he knew why this is so. The answer is that he is also lining up with 4 victories. The boy continued, this year because Sky is in Class E, the quality of winning is more important than the quantity. He can't focus on that to keep his ranking low. His brother called him a coward. First place Erita Tangaroy, she has 2 more wins. In other words, Tsuru thinks it's his brother's fault that Baranga didn't take first place. The hero asked what this should be understood as. The blonde replied that he understood everything perfectly well and his achievements were hindering their ambitions, just like he was. The brother assumed that the hero was using fake magic and suggested joining the student council. Memories of his mentor flashed through the young man's mind. How could this be a hoax? He called magic fake. Sky thought his days with the master were fake. This school is now run by the wrong people. The hero thinks it needs to be brought back to the right track. Meanwhile, Tsuru continued that his brother had been in his way before, but now he will work for him and help him. Sky is assigned to go to an official game next week. This was unexpected for the hero. He doesn't think it will help. He urged not to worry. His opponent will be Baranga Reyes, and if he wins, he will have 5 clear wins. Tsuru explained that after this, the scoring method will change a little. If he takes first place, his faction will gain more influence. Sky is the cornerstone of all this. They stood opposite each other, a silent pause menacing mutual glances. The brunette closed his eyes, hesitating. Then, putting down the pile of books he had been holding in his hands all this time, he replied that he admired his brother's intelligence but decided to argue. Pointing his finger at himself with glee, he replied that if he won, the entire plan would collapse. The second one couldn't contain his anger. Then he replied that the young man had no chance because he had an ace up his sleeve, a deceptive magic. He could not win, such were his brother's orders. Turning around, the guy walked away down the corridor, managing to tell Sky on the go to lose like a cowardly wizard. The hero remained in thought, sealed. Who would have thought that Tsuru had something to do with forbidden magical weapons? Father broke his promise to go to school. Brother despises him as a marriage. The hero used to live peacefully, but not now. Flashing his teeth in a sly smile, Sky was ready to begin the desired game. To defeat Baranga in front of such a crowd, He wants to disgrace the one who is the representative of the faction as much as possible. Picking up the books, he continued his thought. If that was the case, he had to prepare in advance for the official game next week. However, he didn't have time to master the 7 colorless demons now. The face dimmed and then lit up with an idea. Obviously, he should ask Aisha. The setting is the Higher Magic Academy, the girls' dormitory. A wing of a building. At the end of the corridor, there is a staircase leading to the floor above. Girls are walking quietly. The student is sitting in the room writing. A knock distracted her. The girl opened the door with interest. Sky was standing there. The blonde screamed in surprise. A thought flashed through her mind. She remembered the way the guy looked at her in the crowd during the fight. She knew how he felt, and she was sure that was the reason why he came to her so suddenly. But her heart is not yet fully prepared. The young man turned to her, saying that he had an important conversation with her. An important conversation? Rima already mentally saw Sky on his knee in front of her, confessing his tender feelings. She blushed. The girls passing in the corridor stared at him with affection. The heroine asked if he wanted to say it right there, in plain sight. He wants to discuss the details, so he would like to go into the room. The girl hesitated. Then she excitedly invited him in. Upon entering, the guy began with the essence of the conversation. Standing right next to him, the girl blushed and looked straight into his eyes, waiting for him to continue. Sky asked to practice light magic with him. Frozen a silent pause. She asked again, puzzled. He repeated. Then he was afraid of her refusal. He fell to his knees on the floor in supplication. So many emotions were changing in Rem. Campus area, silence. She agreed to teach him. The girl was angry. She warned him that the next time he did something strange, he would be killed. He didn't understand what was wrong with her. She took out her sword and invited him to follow her to the platform. But first she was going to warn him that her special training was hard. The guy said he was used to it, pulling up his gloves, accepting the challenge. The hero stood in the field, 7 colorless demons, the girl thought. She asked the guy if he came to her to learn more about magic. She received a positive answer. Since he could not understand all the subtleties from the book, he did not understand what he could do and what he could not, as well as what the advantages and disadvantages were. Sky believes that Rem knows more about magic than anyone else. She is very flattered by this and is ready to teach her fighting style of light magic. He suggested to start. She closed her eyes, concentrating on the inner world. Having entered a certain mental state, she began to cast spells, creating an atmosphere of mystery and power around herself. In this state, she felt energy filling her, and her confidence grew with each passing minute. She declared that everything was ready. Now she could move at the speed of light at any time. The young man was surprised. He assumed that it was impossible to fly automatically, and it was so. After casting the spell, you can decide when to fly. And if you don't hesitate, there is a chance of not being exposed as a novice magician. Ramai looked around at their surroundings and said that it was possible to fly to any visible place. She explained that you can move anywhere, but if you can't see the place, nothing will work. Sky said that he understood. He thought that it was possible to fly to any part of space, to which he received an answer from her that most people thought the same way, so she insistently told him not to spread this knowledge. The student nodded. And also, such a journey at the speed of light will cost the character only 100 units of mana. This is the only positive aspect of this magic. It doesn't matter if the end point is far or close, the mana cost will be the same. Sky concluded that the spell is beneficial to use over long distances. She noted that he is very capable. However, not everything is so rosy. After all, although the spell requires the same amount of mana regardless of the distance, the effect on the body increases proportionally to the distance. The guy asked again with a meaningful look. The heroine began to explain. There are 3 main types: dizziness, nausea, and headache. If the distance is small, you won't even feel it. But if it's large, the recoil will be huge. Sky asked if it affected her too. The heroine thought about it. Usually in a fight, she doesn't go beyond 50 meters. And I've already gotten used to this distance, and I feel the return of unity. But if we talk about 100 meters, then a little nausea appears. If 200 meters, then a headache and dizziness are added. She prefers to use close combat magical combat tactics, as even a single moment can be fatal. Therefore, she continued to explain to the young man it was better to stay within 50 meters. He understood. Even for her, 100 meters would cause consequences. If he had no more questions, the girl said she would continue. Since he had none, the heroine began to cast a spell again. Sky watched her actions carefully. He asked if the next step would be magically enhancing the weapon. Reme paused. She stopped, and then menacingly, like a cloud, she began to move towards him. He was frightened what was going on. She was worried, and how did he guess that she started casting the enhancement? Sky looked down. Then he explained that the magic would start to make a beeping sound for a moment, which is typical for enhancement-type magic. The blonde lingered. What's with all that squeaking? Is he kidding me? And standing in a questioning pose, she demanded an explanation from him. A silent pause, both look at each other. The hero began to explain as he understood it that there was a beeping, which means advanced magic flashes. The girl angrily considered that he was mocking, but the guy did not understand what was wrong. Why was she so unhappy? Then she asked, is it possible that as soon as she starts doing magic, he understands what type of magic it will be? The young man confirmed. It was strange to him. Wasn't this a common thing? And Rem met wrath again. No one can do that. Sky was extremely shocked by this. The girl covered her forehead with her palm and addressed him, which usually happens during a fight when you try to predict the enemy's spell. Monsters have their own patterns of behavior and movement, so it's not hard to read them. However, with humans, it's much more complicated. The stronger he is, the less likely he is to use spells in the same order. And speaking of her, the heroine has no usual sequences. Both beginners and mid-level mages are equally weak to her, so they cannot read her actions. The brunette thought about it. He asked whether she liked it or not, but he could read her actions. And he also added that his teacher could do the same. The girl's fierce cry followed that this was just an exception. They were both exhausted, and then Sky began to think. Everyone fights without even knowing what their opponent is casting. But what do they do when they determine the speed of transformation? Various images and memories flashed through his mind. It dawned on him. Exactly, isn't the knowledge of the speed of magical transformation publicly available? That makes me think. So it's okay if he casts a low-level spell as if he wants to use an advanced spell? Ramai crossed her arms and replied dryly that this was how they built their tactics. He asked her if she would be surprised if instead of the highest level magic there was much weaker magic. The heroine thought he was definitely making fun of her. He said no. What happens if he can trick you into thinking the spell is not intermediate level, but advanced? The girl raised her voice, not wanting Sky to mock her. After all, if these were official games, it would all end in defeat. But if it was a real fight, that is death. After her comment, the young man turned pale. Cold sweat ran down his cheek. Both fell into silence again, standing opposite each other on the field. The magician lowered his head, looking at his feet. That's how it was. The hero looked up. A bird was flying in the bright cloudless sky under the bright rays of the sun. The common sense of this world was incomprehensible to him. But if the opponent doesn't think of a double trick, the outcome of the battle will be predetermined. The brunette smiled lightly. His face was burning with anticipation. The girl watched the guy's emotions with excitement. In her opinion, he was clearly thinking about something vile. He exclaimed impatiently, wanting to continue the special training as soon as possible. The next technique of light magic. Meanwhile, on the academy campus, Barenga sat on a leather sofa, his legs and arms crossed and his brow furrowed. The first time he lost was when he was 10 years old, and the last time was quite recently. They were both overtaken by mysterious magic with unprecedented power, but such a genius, as he himself considered himself, lost twice. Panic overcame him. Sky Vincent. Baring his teeth, he thought that if Sky was also a genius, then he was afraid of losing to his cowardly magic. Having settled more comfortably on the sofa, he stated, tomorrow's official battle will not be so simple. The eyes lit up with the thought, we sealed Aisha's mysterious magic. After this, in the guy's opinion, he would not be able to use not only magical tools, but magic itself. And now victory was in their pocket. He was interested to see how Sky would cope with this. He laughed maliciously, raising his hands up. He wanted to disgrace him and make him look like a fool in front of everyone. And then there was a knock on the door, calling the gentleman. Barenga's richly decorated room. They apologized for disturbing them and announced that they had brought someone. He turned to the guy who was sprawled on the floor after being kicked. They asked if he had something to say to Mr. Barenga, and then the owner recognized the new arrival as Aaron, to whom he had lent money the other day. He knelt down to his level and apologized for dragging him in so roughly. Smiling artificially, he asked the guest how the gambling hall he had once shown him was. He assured Barenga that he would definitely win, but the young man was sweating with excitement and his eyes were filled with fear. Aaron fell to his knees, bowing to the floor before the owner of the room, asking for forgiveness. He was truly confident in his success. I thought back to that time, remembering. At first, everything was fine. He kept winning, but in the end, everything was taken away from him. Lace grabbed the boy's shoulders, saying that it looked like he had had a hard time. And then he raised his head, looking straight into his eyes, as if into his soul, shouting with all his fury. Did he really think that Baranga would say that? Then, with great force, he began to hit him often, pressing his face to the floor and calling him all sorts of insults. He had lost his money, and he demanded that his funds be returned immediately. He lay on the floor and looked askance at Baranga. He asked what he needed. Then, grabbing him by the hair, he asked if he wanted to report this to the student council and all the teachers. He said that he must definitely repay the debt, and Baranga Lace didn't care how Aaron did it. He hit him again, then he turned and walked away across the room. His henchmen jeered and joked. And then one of the comrades, holding out a handkerchief to Aaron, said that there was a way to get the money back. The crippled boy heard a half-whisper in his ear, suggesting that he win an official game to reduce his own debt. His followers helped him up and, as they led him out of the room, urged him to think together. One, surprised, turned to the leader how quickly Aaron became a slave, to which he replied that he does not keep track of everyone, there are too many of them. But in his opinion, this way he will be able to defeat the bastard Sky in the game. 5 solo victories in the top 6 using this worthless. Continued to think, in 12 weeks he will have a total of 11 wins. Even without the small fry, they will easily reach the top. Arita, who took first place, Tenguroi with 2 wins and 0 losses, does not take the official battle seriously yet. It is time to use these slaves to increase the number of wins. Staring in confusion, I also thought they don't have any direct enemies. But I heard that commoners like Rem, who was ranked 25th, 0 wins, 1 loss, are also quite strong. You can use them as much as you want, so there won't be any problems. Except for this guy. Sky appeared in Baranga's image. The blonde grinned maliciously. He was looking forward to meeting him in tomorrow's battle. And tomorrow has arrived. There are huge crowds of people in the stands. Among them are familiar faces. Rime, Fulman, the president, Suru, Baranga's henchmen, including the newly minted arena. The Hall of Flagstones. In his room, Sky thought, Ram and the others will come to see. Tartan did not get a ticket. His gaze darted into the crowd, examining faces. And then the host announced the hero's entrance onto the stage. He took his weapon. A ring glittered on the index finger of his right hand. And here is the hero in the arena, the debut of the magic of the 7 colorless demons. A memory from Rame's last training session. She gave the hero her sword, saying it suited his fighting style. Then she added that he had to win. He was surprised, but the surprise was replaced by a slight smile. Sky took the sword to use in the duel. Returning during the fight, on the stage on both sides there are already duelists ready to fight. The stands are full of people. A verbal light skirmish. Baranga, smirking, is surprised that his opponent did not run away. In response, Sky said that he was also surprised that Baranga did not chicken out and that he has a strange hairstyle. The blonde clearly didn't like the answer, but he even wanted his rival to continue to be brave. His brother advised him to give in, but he certainly wouldn't get off easy. Then he began to gloat, saying that Sky would never wash away such a disgrace and he would become the winner and destroy in front of everyone. The brunette, looking calm, teased even more. Oh yeah, they asked him to give in. And suddenly he gave a command to his familiar. Pierrot came out in full combat readiness. The fair-haired rival called Pierrot worthless, saying that he was a match for such a cowardly guy, and called for his own. And then the water dragon arrived. The presenter asked about the participants' readiness. The duelists exchanged glances. They were ready. The start of the fight was announced. Sky concentrated, closing his eyes. The magic of the 7 colorless demons was activated. The hero felt it. Magic transformation speed 200%. The guy resolutely took hold of his weapon. He used a deceptive mechanic, breaking the mastery. His eyes flashed with a bright light. He began to actively conjure with his hands. Nature of light, intermediate magic, weapon enhancement. Power consumption, 400, doubled by 7 colorless demon magic, 200% conversion rate a half. The amount of power consumed is compensated. 599 remains. Excellent. The magic of the 7 colorless demons and the tricky tricks work without problems. What Tartan said earlier was not a joke. The magic of the 7 colorless demons includes the magic of fire, water, earth, air, light, and darkness. When activated, all 700 types will be available. He continued the memory. Tartan wasn't joking. The 7 colorless demons have one special feature. You can use all kinds of magic, but it won't be like normal magic. He recalled everything he had been taught. For example, basic fire magic, fireball, casting time, 1 sec, strength consumption, 15 power average. If it hits the enemy, it will damage them. Fire burns by nature. But if you use a fireball when the magic of the 7 colorless demons is activated, there will be no burning effect since the magic has a different nature. Sky, in that lesson with Tartan, assumed that in other words, it was copy magic when using magic during the action of the 7 colorless demons. Raising his finger up, Tartan wanted to talk about one more feature. The consumption of magic power doubles. Sky was furious about this, and mentally he turned to Pierrot. This is forbidden magic. He had precisely determined what, in his opinion, was not suitable for the hero. The heroes continued their discussion. And if Sky doesn't have enough magical power, then he won't be able to use the spell, and that was it. The boy thought about it. Then the use of 700 species may also change. In his case, there are too many restrictions due to the consumed magic power. Then he asked what would happen with the level of training. Tartan asked again at first and then understood it himself. When his mentor taught this magic, he mentioned something about it. And in the end, he got tired of explaining, saying only that one should live easily, but not be greedy with equipment. Tartan ended the story with this. Sky was puzzled. He sighed heavily, and indeed, starting the level of preparation from scratch. Nevertheless, the hero believed that it was possible to cope with this. From the clown, lazily scratching his body, it was heard that there were no problems. Then he would set the level of all magic to 100, but only for 1 minute. The hero was curious what would happen after that. The familiar smiled. Does Sky really not understand? Magic will reach preparation level 100 in 1 minute. He will give him -100. He giggled and asked if the conditions were good. Sky left without comment. Then he asked what would happen if magic was used at level -100. The clown said he didn't know, and if the mage was so interested, why not try? The young man swallowed and accepted the little creature's conditions. That's great. At the present time, the first minute of the fight has begun. Sky rushed at his opponent with a swing. As he walked the distance around the arena, he reminded himself to remain calm. Crowds of people watched intently from the stands. Ramai looked at her friend. This is the magic of the 7 colorless demons. When she uses her magic, the sword glows, but for some reason Sky's became transparent. The blonde man with the bowl cut grinned as he saw the enemy approaching. Some strange magic. He took out his weapon, a trident, and waved it and began to cast a spell. He pointed it towards Vincent, saying that he had already lost. Baranga used Water Strike, basic water magic, cast time, 1 second. Sky, who was rushing towards him, was sent flying into the air by the wave of the strike. But maintaining his dignity and calm, he was able to slow down and take a stance. The guy was surprised. End the match with the opening spell. He had no idea how stupid the opponent was, but the hero had little time, 48 seconds left. He needed to finish everything as quickly as possible. However, the blonde used the power of his familiar, the water dragon, his bottomless eyes. The hero felt something irresistible. His body became so heavy, his legs gave way. The splashes of water around him began to move a little. Baranga bared his teeth. He had said that it was all over. His water dragon is quite a powerful familiar. The blonde stated that only strong people can use it. Any water within a radius of 50 meters is completely under the control of a strong creature. There were more and more drops, and when Sky's clothes get wet, he will come to an end. The drops that had wrapped around the hero's throat began to thicken, squeezing the young man. Sky fell to his knees. The blonde smirked. It seemed that this was the end of Sky. Baranga wondered how much pain he was in. The brunette was having an internal dialogue. He had no other choice. He would have to change tactics. He used intermediate magic, physical reinforcement. Power consumption, 500, remaining power, 99. The opponent proclaimed that whatever he was going to do was already useless. The hero picked up speed, preparing to take the decisive step. His legs were tightly wrapped in streams of water, restricting his movements and making the whole process very difficult. The guy was cursing. Even the strengthening he had used earlier to protect himself from this element was of no help. The sword owner, who was watching from the stands, watched his fight and thought that this was a really tough fight for Sky. Baranga is trash and the worst kind of person. His powers are restored over time, however, his abilities as a mage are good. There is a big difference in the total amount of magic power between the two duelists. From the stands, girls' cries of support for the blonde were heard. Ramai was indignant. The whole room shouted his name, Baranga, Baranga. He was reveling in his glory, his eyes closed in pleasure. The seated Fulman, the president, and Ramai were very unhappy about this. Taking his moment, Sky crouched down as if preparing for something. He gripped the hilt of his sword. Just a little more, his remaining strength was 99. Much energy was expended. The exhausted hero lowered his head. In an arrogant tone, he asked what it was like and whether Sky wanted to escape to stop suffering. And he sneered that he couldn't anyway, a crazy look, but the hero didn't give up. The magic barrier hadn't reached 10,000 yet, the game wasn't over yet. His hand gripped the weapon's handle. The number 19,726 was flashing on the scoreboard. The enemy was jubilant and laughing loudly. He was calling on the young man to suffer. But he still had 5 seconds, which he intended to use against the pathetic excuse for a wizard standing opposite him. Countdown: 4. Rem's worried look. 3. Fulman in hysterics. 2. The president's attentive gaze. He managed to scream that everything would be fine if Sky didn't act up. But he had other plans. He took up the sword and smiled. His strength was restored to 100. He used the light magic he had recently learned, using all his strength, high speed of movement. And having crossed the entire arena, he appeared lightning fast behind the blonde. He raised the weapon over him and said his name. And with a crazy smile and the same crazy look, he called on him to be more attentive next time and talk less. Baranga only managed to turn around to look at him. But the sword was already firmly embedded. Snot and drool came out of the guy's canals. He was defeated and began to fall. Weapon skill improved 100, body fortification skill 100, 200% conversion speed doubles the magic power. All his girlfriends were so happy and proud of Sky, watching from the stands. Total damage 16,866. Sky sighed with relief. There was a sparkle in his eyes. Perfect moment. The host declared the fight over, and since Baringel's magic barrier dropped below 10,000, the winner is Sky Vincent. The tired winner moved towards the exit, leaving the stage. His brother sent him a furious look at his back. Sky scene, clouds float beautifully and calmly. The brunette trudged along, saying how heavy everything is. If it weren't for the magic weapon, it would have been hard. He was completely exhausted. He needed to get home quickly and go to bed. And then a familiar silhouette was approaching him from behind, screaming. It was the defeated duelist. He began to call Sky dirty names, considering him a cheater. He couldn't use this magic. He looked back over his shoulder measuredly. And he replied that he could, so there was nothing he could do. But this did not convince the enemy. After all, if it were not for this move, he would have certainly won. Pointing his trident at the brunette's back, he considered him a pathetic wizard who could not use such magic. Then he began to curse in a raised voice. If this had been a real battle, no one would have helped him. However, his water dragon had captured him and was defeating him. In Baranga's opinion, the opponent wasn't even a noble, which meant he was just an inferior being. Inferior beings like Sky should only yelp so as not to interfere with true nobles like him. The brunette replied that he was breaking school rules since it was forbidden to summon a familiar in an inappropriate place. But he didn't care. He suggested continuing by calling the winner of the fight a cowardly wizard. The guy sighed. Well, he warned him. In accordance with his powers as a student council officer, Sky said that he was taking control of the distraught Baranga and pointed the barrel of his gun directly at the blonde man. The opponent clearly did not expect this, and his raised gaze spoke of it. The guy called it a real battle with Baranga. He shot a column of powerful energy at him. Defeated again, he fell to the ground. Sky felt how tired he was. It seemed that the strength that had been restored a little had left him again. He had to quickly return to the dorm. The hero trudged towards the campus. A busy square, the next day, rows of benches and shops. The girl grabbed the hero by the wrist, pulling him forward and wanting to speed up. But he just went to return the katana. Now they are walking through the shops, holding hands. The hero does not understand how this happened. After the battle with Baranga, the hero went to return the sword to its owner. He was grateful to the girl. After all, it was because of her that he won this fight. She was flattered. Sky wanted to please her as a token of gratitude and gave her a flower. He looked at her in confusion and slight excitement. She smiled openly, as if she had been waiting for this moment for a long time. Remy asked again, is this flower for him? But the young man awkwardly replied that he simply could not think of anything else. After all, he didn't know what she liked. She accepted his gift. After which she looked at him coquettishly and added that this was not all she would like. He became wary, and what else did she want? The girl thought. And then she told Sky that she wanted to eat ice cream again and asked if he would buy it for her. He began to rummage through his pockets, calling her to wait because he would give her money. She immediately grabbed him by the collar and pulled him toward herself. She looked straight into his soul with genuine anger. Did he want to die? The girl continued menacingly. Does she really look like someone who can't afford ice cream? What an idiot he is. Then she asked the question directly, wouldn't he invite her to go together? Rem lowered her head, blushing. Her look said it all. You should have guessed. The guy thought about it. Then he said that he didn't really like sweets, and in vain he met his friend's wrath again, and so they went anyway. They headed to the capital. The central busy streets, the square, the tall buildings. They went into a boutique, trying on different outfits. First she, then he, on her very insistent recommendation. The girl decided to try on the earrings. She was wonderful and seemed to glow. Sky looked at her with enchanted eyes. They continued their promenade. They went into a perfume shop, trying on scents that would suit them. We chatted and just spent time together. Clouds floated slowly over the roofs of the houses. Finally, the girl suggested going to the ice cream shop. The guy couldn't contain his feelings. It turns out he had been waiting for this for a long time. Remy looked at him sternly. Then she indignantly asked him if he hadn't had fun walking around the capital. She received an unclear answer. The heroes continued their walk. Then the guy began his thought. Many men are ready to go somewhere with her and pay for everything themselves. Why doesn't she go out with them? The blonde became angry at his words. And she roared in his face what a complete idiot he was since he didn't understand anything. He grabbed his head. Then he pointed to the sign and called the girl. This is the right store. They sell ice cream there. To the sound of the bell at the front door, they entered the shop. Sky asked what she wanted. She thought about it. Then she said the scary long name, one ice cream white Belliandra Zubilimicus Centuria. The young man was amazed. What is this? Then she continued, offering her companion to split it in half. He would order one and she would order the other. There, one black strawberry deluxe Phoenix ice cream was ready and waiting for them. They sat down on the chairs and started to taste. The atmosphere was cozy and lively. Then he confessed to the girl that the ice cream he tried was absolutely tasteless. And if he tells you the taste in advance, then in Remy's opinion, it's not so interesting. And he continued, your other half. The girl became sad. Nothing can be done. The friend reached for Sky's ice cream with a spoon. She took it for a test. She blushed, turning her head away. Oh my God, this. The guy couldn't understand her mixed feelings and asked if he was right. Closing her eyes, she reached for the next spoon, but this time in her half. After all, white Belliandra Zubilimic Centuria is much better. Sky looked at her with affection as she carefully ate the ice cream and enjoyed its taste. And she said that she would gladly eat his portion too, because she was tired from walking all day long. The young man was glad that he was with Rem now. She tenderly handed him a spoon, as if feeding a baby. The cups, recently filled with ice cream, were empty, but the heroes did not leave their places and watched the view of the noisy city outside the shop window. So many people. This is the capital of the kingdom. The girl noted that the center of the Istavari district is amazing in this regard. The guy commented that Remy knows the city well. She replied that she wanted to fully experience this crowded city with its pros and cons. He asked for an example of the pros. She thought about it. For example, this ice cream shop. The guy concluded that a place with lots of sweets is already a plus in itself. And he continued listening to her. She had already started talking about the downsides, but he got distracted by something. He was excited by the suddenness. And here was the bad side of a prosperous city. All the inhabitants looked in one direction, clearly amazed by what was happening. The heroine said that this happens all the time. The guy couldn't believe it. The robbery was happening in broad daylight. Calmly sipping tea, closing her eyes, the girl replied that there was nothing surprising about it. This was the capital of the kingdom. But Sky had already stood up. His gaze is full of determination. He exclaimed that he was going to help. The girlfriend jumped up in surprise. But this is a serious matter, and help will arrive soon. But Sky wasn't going to stand aside. He jumped up and ran to the epicenter, and the girl followed him with a mesmerized gaze touchingly. He seemed so kind to her. The young man ran through the crowd of people. He continued to follow the route of the offenders. He assessed the situation. There were about 10 robbers. And it looks like they're almost done with their job. They're good, they're in control. A female member of the group was putting bags of loot into a cart. But besides that, the guy discovered something. They have a hostage. A man from the group was holding the poor girl, clearly weaker in build, with one hand holding her hands tightly behind her back and with the other holding a knife which he held to her throat. It takes a lot of courage to attack a casino, considering that it is owned by the big house of Baranga, and you can't call them saints themselves. That's the opinion of the heroine. She continued her thought. If they were targeting the casino, it meant they had quite a lot of experience. The casino always hired several mage guards. Moreover, the Ray's family's casino should have the highest security system. Sky looked sharply. He kept his gun at the ready. They exchanged glances with a gang member, a fair-haired man with sunken cheeks and a wolf tattoo on his right shoulder. He let go of the holster, desperately saying that he couldn't do it from such a long distance. Rimet asked where he was going. Then he said decisively that from that moment on he would take full control of the situation with the robbers. He also gave his girlfriend the task of protecting the hostage when he was released. The heroes looked at each other, a little embarrassed. The girl asked a question like everything is fine, but why would he help them? Turning to her, he continued that gratitude was secondary here, and he didn't want to be perceived as a magician, and if he did everything quickly and quietly, wouldn't the hostage be released safely? Rem didn't understand his plan. He flashed a smile that was filled with determination. His plan was to use a combination of the magic of the 7 colorless demons and a magic weapon. His friend, mesmerized by his confidence, looked at him questioningly. He, sensing her doubt, assured her that he would explain everything later. At the moment, her attention should be focused on saving the hostage, who was in a critical situation. The blonde girl understood. Then, looking him straight in the eye, she asked the question that was bothering her. Could he be trusted? The answer was positive and seemed sincere. Well, the young man said goodbye and the heroes passed each other. He quickly ran towards the epicenter of events. Clear blue sky above the capital. The hero used the power of the magic of the 7 colorless demons during the fight with Baranga, and he thinks that there are different effects depending on how the magic is used. He thinks that he should try out different combinations. Sky stood in the square in the center of which a noisy stream of people raged. He took up a position like a statue in the midst of the hurrying crowd. People passed by, absorbed in their own cares and affairs, and he held his breath. The casino is 500 meters away. He couldn't smell the robbers from here, so he wouldn't be able to sense the magical power from 500 meters away. The guy had already put out 2 pistols, using a strong grip. Now it's time to use the combination he's been thinking about for a long time. Let's try it. The magic of the 7 colorless demons has been activated. He used the initial level magic of air nature, Hawk's Eye. Casting time, 1 sec, magic consumption, 100. Due to the use of the magic of 7 colorless demons, the consumption increases by 200. The picture of the city was so clear. Those same robbers came under his sight. Only 12 people, excellent. The young man began to shoot alternately from both pistols. Magic that consumes less energy is easy to control. With 12 magic bullets, the magic consumption is only 12. Besides, he glared menacingly at someone in the straight direction. His magic manipulation was Class A. The haze of energy from his power swept through the crowd of people passing by the capital's square, rushing past all the random residents like a whirlwind. And she achieved her goal with lightning speed, eliminating the robbers with noise and rumble. The bodies of all the robbers from the gang involved in the crime were lying on the cobblestones of the street a second later. Sky smiled with satisfaction. A high-rise casino building. A crowd of onlookers gathered at its entrance discuss what is happening with noticeable excitement. The hero runs up to the scene, already physically present there. The man in uniform has chained the guilty. They are walking in a straight line behind him. Sky watches this scene further. And suddenly it flashed through his mind. And the hostage, turning his head, he saw with relief how the girl was hugging the hostage by the shoulders, asking if everything was okay. The guy was satisfied with the work he had done and with his friend's help. He called out to her. She turned around. The young man thanked her for her sensitive participation, thereby embarrassing her a little. He then explained that the criminals could have suddenly disappeared, and then he would not have been able to implement his strategy alone. He was able to do everything well because the girl was there. She denied it. In her humble opinion, she had done almost nothing. The couple turned around, watching the bandits walk in a row. The guy commented that in any case, the robbers had succeeded in the robbery. The policeman accompanying the column could not understand who had provided assistance. Sky closed his eyes. After a short silence, he exhaled. Okay, no need to think about it. The main thing is that the matter is settled safely. And he asked about their further plan to return home. The girl answered affirmatively, adding that they had seen a lot of things today and she was tired. The young man agreed. Then they heard the clip-clop of a horse walking. Then someone called out to them, apologizing for the disturbance. The young man looked questioningly. It was a rider, a girl in shining armor, addressing the heroes. They looked at each other. They had overcome a difficulty, and now there was another one. The girl asked to talk a little. She stepped onto the ground, dismounting from her horse and drawing level with the heroes. Then she introduced herself. This was the captain of the knights from the kingdom of Nashia, Gen Odora, and she repeated that she wanted to talk to the two of them. Rem asked her what was the matter. She apologized for stopping them and interrupting the heroes' dialogue, to which the blonde replied that it was okay because she was a knight. Sky looked at her in bewilderment. A knight? Her friend managed to whisper that knights are the elite among the elites of the whole world. This position is reserved for those who graduated from the Magic Academy with excellent grades. They are in the thick of things, patrolling the city and solving such problems. And after finishing a career, you can even get a title or territory. From the position of students, these are people who fly in the sky. After the girl's explanations, it became clear to the hero. He folded his hands behind his head. Then he asked whether she was going home or not. Rem nudged him with her elbow, urging him to show at least a little interest. The knight watched. Then she began to tell him that as soon as she heard about the robbers, she immediately rushed to the scene. She wanted to know how the military police worked, and it seemed like the matter was settled, but the captain thought about it. A police officer questions a female hostage who has been injured. Residents converse among themselves, forming a crowd about what happened. Another officer sends the culprits to jail. Our heroes stand aside. Then she called out, "Excellent." Jane called the boys to pay attention to something. They both looked questioningly. First, she explained the casino was attacked by robbers whom the knight had been tracking. She was sure they were slain. They were neutralized at the same time. Sky was interested. Rem was worried. Jane then added that she was pleased to see that heroes were able to do this without attracting attention. Sky's face, the gendarmerie couldn't do that. It was impossible even for a city wizard. So she assumes that this is a very high-quality work by two young students, and the main star here is not a lady at all. And this young man, pointing at Sky, he stood majestically and looked somewhere ahead, thinking about his own. Jane Adora asked what kind of magic he was using and if it could be repeated. His blonde girlfriend had already started to speak, but the guy stopped her with a hand gesture. She fell silent and listened. He moved her aside so that she would stand behind him. The girl apologized. Then Sky said that he was not going to talk about it anymore, and anyway, it was high time he and Ram went back. Jane, closing her eyes, accepted his answer. And then she added that she was actually thinking of rewarding them, and then the guy stopped and went into deep thought. A picture appeared in his head, a scale, money on one side, his own pride on the other. Sky thought. The boys turned to face the knight again, deciding to accept her tempting offer. She approved of their choice. She said she would ask for a reward for them and ask them to wait a minute. However, she said she would not make them bored while they waited. Therefore, she would tell them a little about the slains, which is what the robbers turned out to be. So the slains are bandits who are currently doing their business on the streets of the capital. They call themselves fighters for justice, but they themselves are no different from ordinary bandits. The young man asked again with interest for justice. He was curious. Today, it all happened at the Ray's Casino, which doesn't have the best reputation. They only target people who earn money dishonestly or by profiting off others. However, they use the stolen money only to expand their organization. But there is something that causes great concern. The knight stopped her story, thinking. She then shared the information that the boss of the slain was the former knight Captain Braros. He was her predecessor and was called the greatest knight of all time. The heroes looked at each other meaningfully. Sky looked tense and concentrated, and Ramai was puzzled and even a little worried. The guy sighed with a sigh. He decided to tell. It seemed that it was not easy for her, so he did not ask about the last thing. Jane only answered that if he met him, he would never be able to defeat him. And she said mysteriously that he would die even before he had time to think about it. Sky fell silent. Turning away from the girls and waving his hand, he was about to go his own way. His girlfriend was about to follow him when he stopped. That's right, he forgot to pick up his reward. The next day at the academy, Sky was puzzled. What was this breeze between them? She suddenly treats him to dinner. Sweat rolled down his cheek. And they are all alone with the president. The girl, dressed up and sitting in a dress, said that Sky worked so hard that she always thought she would not be able to repay him in full. She asked him to eat well. It was fun to eat with sweet Rame, but she thought eating with Sky would be pretty interesting too. He swallowed awkwardly, agreed, and began to eat. He was so pleased to try the dish, delicious. He started to gobble it up. The girl told him not to hurry so much. She reached out to the guy and, coming closer, gently removed the droplet from the corner of the guy's lips with a handkerchief. He did not expect such closeness. She smiled sweetly and seemed to embarrass the young man. He thanked her, but there was a note of uncertainty and awkwardness in his voice. And she also hurried to tell him that his brother, Vincent, had lost his magic weapon in the official game, but he was pretty close to graduating. The hero declared that he was not bothered by such circumstances and that he did not care. He continued to enjoy the food, savoring it with every spoonful. Besides, it was a rare occasion, she added when she attacked with all her might, so she didn't think he would be able to fight any time soon. Just use some information and their faction would fall immediately. There was a schadenfreude. To Sky, in any case, in her opinion, he was a good man for defeating Baranga. After the fight, many people's opinions of him changed. Isn't that good? She thinks that every person needs the approval of the crowd. Then she said she wanted him to run for student council president. That was her wish. The brunette replied that he didn't like that, putting another bite of delicious food in his mouth. A slight smile graced her round face with her bangs. She knew he would say that, and Rem was right. She looked straight at the boy. For some reason, those who don't deserve a place are always chasing it, and those who do don't care. She found it strange as a student council position, to which Sky wondered if that's how the world works. She looked at his face again, wide-eyed, then giggled. Sky questioned. Then she put down her fork and urged him to forget, turning the subject back to him. Then she asked if he knew Gen Adora. After all, as the student council president, she has many stages to go through, and one of them is the knighthood post. She continued her speech. Thanks to this connection, they have constant contact with each other. The heroes looked at each other. Sky opened his mouth, deciding to speak. Yes, he knows Gen Adora. The heroine understood. By the way, Rame told her all about it. She said it was fun. The hero asked again and mentally imagined this picture. The fair-haired girlfriend actively gesticulates and tells their story in colors and in all details. So the president asked to tell Jen about the attack on the casino. And she mentioned in her story that there was a student at the crime scene who immediately neutralized all the bandits, although they even took a hostage. The heroine said that this was clearly not something that could be done one-on-one, but she had seen his magic, so she understood perfectly well what was being discussed. The hero's silent gaze directed at the girl. Finally, he asked the question if she wanted him to tell Adora about his magic. The president looked at the boy in response. But no, she didn't want that, and that was surprising to the young man. She smiled slyly. Leaning on her hands, which were on her elbows, she declared that she wanted Sky to be only hers. Whatever it meant, the guy was shocked by the answer. He couldn't even find the words to say anything. Then she reminded him that she was still on the student council. He asked if she wanted to work together after graduation. And she confirmed for her ambitions. The young man looked at her with wide eyes. They both looked at each other. The young man thought to himself, it looks like this is serious. A smile flitted across his face. He was curious to know what the chairman's ambitions were. She lowered her head modestly, closed her eyes, and smiled relaxed and easy. She wants to achieve peace in the whole world. The boy has a silent question, but then, she should tell Gen Adora about him because he could be useful. But no, this is work for knights. She explained that she wanted to use his power to carry out her plans. Sky thought about it. And she quickly added a comment that of course she would prepare him for everything. After all, she didn't want him to hate her. There was silence at the table again, but it wasn't awkward. The hero closed his eyes, smiling. Now he understood why Rem was so fascinated by her. The brunette was about to leave the table and standing up said again that he was in great debt to the chairman. She also hurried to stand up, following his example. The heroes agreed she could, of course, count on his support. Night, the glowing full moon is slightly covered by misty clouds as if in a haze. In a private, well-kept estate, the voice sounds, "I report." An insider explains the situation to the boss. An attack on the Ray's family casino in the capital was stopped by an unknown person shortly before success. All 12 members of the attack were detained. Intending to drink until the last remark of his speaker, the thug never touched the bottle, smashing it to pieces in indignation. The fragments flew apart. A large man in shoulder pads, Braro's former captain of the Knights, now the leader of the slain bandits, demanded an explanation. Then the guy working for him continued his speech. According to the staff near the scene, the hostages were released and Gen Adora arrived on the scene. Yes, he remembered that girl, and he seethed, frowning, wanting to hear what would happen next. Then the young man declared, "No one from the human team died, so when the investigation is done, the location of their headquarters will most likely be revealed," Braros exclaimed. Then he jumped up and started shouting. He wanted answers, whether there were any dead and whether it was a battle. He called his men idiots. Then he addressed the reporter by name. Kunchi needed to make a plan to move the main headquarters to another location as soon as possible. Kunchi clearly understood his instructions from the boss. Then he sat down again. Taking the paper in his hands, he addressed the man with glasses and long blonde hair standing next to him. Kanento, what did he think? But Kanento couldn't say much yet. He, a former royal knight who was called a tactician during his service, did not think that this was the work of Gen Adora. And if it was her doing, then everything would be much more interesting. Perhaps it was betrayal, although it would be difficult to betray. After all, the slain have a blood pact. The advisor thought, resting his chin on his hand. Again, he suggested that it might be an accident. At this point, it would be most rational to assume that it did take place. They had no informants, no leaks, and the time the knights arrived must have been calculated to be ideal. If this is the case, then it would appear that someone accidentally stopped the attack, so it is reasonable to say that this is, in the opinion of Braro's henchmen, an unfortunate coincidence. But he couldn't allow this thought. After all, he had chosen 12 well-trained magicians. Then the assistant again put forward a suggestion. The leader couldn't wait. He wanted to know who it was. For example, the former royal knight muttered through his teeth. "This is a student of the higher school of magic." The fair-haired man finished his thought. The chief frowned his dark brows again. "That's how it is." Then he listened further that one of the reasons could be different. The kingdom is currently in its heyday, and children are sometimes born with strength comparable to monsters. Sitting back on the couch, Braros crossed his powerful arms over his large, heaving chest and closed his eyes, wondering and asking his interlocutor if he remembered how they had hunted bandits together when they were students. Kanento smiled. And, continuing his speech, he recalled that they had once been on a completely different level than amateur groups. However, the advisor added, he had heard that the student council president and his deputy were distinguished by their ability. The boss said that Kunchi was also good, but his comrade had a different opinion. He was not good enough. A whole month of preparation for this attack, he spent a lot of money buying information. He wonders if it is possible to carry out an attack on the royal family now. After all, the gang is experiencing serious financial difficulties. The long-haired blonde added his vision again that they needed to choose the next target to solve the gang's big problems. Braros was lost in his own thoughts. Then with a sly smile he said that he thought he had one in mind. The heroes looked at each other. The advisor became interested in what the leader had come up with. He hinted the man himself had just spoken about him. A high school of magic attended by a bunch of aristocrats. The former captain of the Knights is very interested in how much their parents are willing to pay for their precious children. A student of the higher school of magic stands in front of its inner wall and looks at the tables placed against it. The boy stands with his head raised up and says that he has finally found her and asks someone to wait a little. The student climbs the wall and thinks that he will soon be able to meet someone. The boy jumps off the other side of the wall, but is met by a man with long white hair and a black robe. The student looks up and sees Kinto. He stares at the man in horror, frozen. Kinto says with displeasure that he had been wondering all this time who was making that noise. He reaches out to the frightened child. Kinto looks at the student angrily and says that running away at night is against school rules and uses witchcraft on the boy. 2 days later, the student council president says that Rengia gave her a message confirming that a table had been placed against the southwest wall the previous morning. The chairwoman sits at a large table and across from her are Rem and Sky. The girl continues to talk, saying that by midday they had learned that only Tarutin from Class 1E was at the wall. She adds that 2 days have passed and no one knows where he is. Sky, with her arms folded, objects that Tarutin couldn't just run away in the middle of the night since he's not that kind of guy. The hero says that Tarutin is one of those people who are afraid of ruining their grades with such antics, unless it is an exceptional case. The chairman counters that it was an exceptional case. There is a silent scene in the hall. The heroes look at each other in silence. Sky says that according to the information received from the students of the class, they saw a pair of aristocrats similar to Tarutin on the streets of the capital. A boy stands on the street and shows a photo to passers-by. Sky says that people said they saw Tarutin when they were shown his photo. The student has his back turned. Sky says he disappeared immediately after receiving the information. The hero says that Tarutin was separated from his real parents as a child. The chairman listens silently. Sky says the boy seized on this information, hoping to be reunited with his parents. The chairman says it seems Tarutin has no intention of returning with his parents. The girl holds her shoulder and asks Sky and Rama to find the child as soon as possible. The chairman looks at the heroes directly and seriously. She says that she has a feeling that something doesn't add up in this case. Sky and Ram look at the girl eagerly. The chairwoman picks up a glass ball on a small pillow and says that she first needs information about where the child is. She holds it up in front of her and says that she will try to find out now. The girl looks at the ball, puzzled. Sky and Rem look at her questioningly. The chairman says that she understands that Tarutin is probably hiding in the capital of the kingdom. Sky asks incredulously if this is reliable information, to which Ram admiringly says that the chairman's predictions of fate are amazing. The girl points to a glass ball and says that it is the chairman's wand. There is a fox-like animal in the glass sphere. The chairman says that there is a spirit beast inside the sphere and that the sphere not only acts as a wand but also has a mysterious power. Sky looks at the sphere indifferently and asks if there really are such. The chairman abruptly rises from his chair and orders both heroes to immediately begin searching for Tarutin. Sky and Rem respond with readiness. The heroes come to the royal city. Rem looks at the map where something is marked with a cross. She says that according to the map which the chairman gave, the right place is somewhere here. Sky calls the girl. They look around the corner and the hero says that this is what the fortune-telling predicted. The heroes see some house. Ram, seeing a sign with alcohol, asks if it is a popular beer hall. Sky replies that it looks like it is. The boy skeptically asks if the fortune-telling shouldn't be more accurate. Ram gets angry at the hero. She threatens to ask not to insult the chairman, causing Sky to fall to her knees and beg for his forgiveness. The heroes look around the corner and Ram tells Sky to look. They survey the area. Rem asks Sky if he knows this is a working-class area. She asks him to pay attention to a woman sewing across from the tavern. A young girl is sitting on a chair sewing a dress. Rem says that she makes women's clothing, but this is not the place to sell such things. Rem looks at the woman's strong legs and says that she has well-developed muscles despite her sedentary lifestyle. The girl looks closer and sees a scar on the woman's neck. Ram says that this is the body of a man who does not earn his living by sewing. Sky raises her hand in indignation and embarrassment and opens her mouth to respond. Rem interrupts and says that wizards like them can immediately identify a person who is used to fighting. Sky looks at Ray with admiration and asks if she knows she's amazing. The girl proudly throws back a strand of hair. The girl goes on to say that, putting all these factors together, it turns out that the woman is guarding the tavern. If an inappropriate client comes, she will immediately report it. Sky looks at the woman seriously and says that he understands. The hero turns to Rem and says that, in other words, there is something in the tavern that they want to hide. The girl smiles and replies that he is absolutely right. Sky thinks that Tarutin got into something bad. A smiling face of a boy appears in front of him. He thinks that he should help him quickly. He glances at Rem and asks how they can get inside. The heroes look at themselves and Sky says that they hardly look like regular customers. Rem thinks and says that there is nothing to be done. The girl looks at the guy confidently and offers to do it. Sky skeptically asks what exactly, thinking that he has a bad feeling. The heroes approach the tavern. The woman who sewed looks at them in surprise. Rem shouts to Sky to have another drink. The red-faced heroes walk waddling and holding each other. Sky says Rem's name, and the girl, holding a bottle to her head, suggests going for a good drink. The heroes enter the tavern. Rem asks Sky if this isn't a great place, to which the guy replies that it is wonderful. The woman looks at the heroes skeptically. The woman is annoyed. Sky says she's glaring at them, to which Rem replies that it's okay because it's just a look at people you despise. The girl turns around and yells at the woman to stop staring at them. Sky chimes in and tells her to look at the teetotaler. The heroes happily enter the tavern. Ram and Sky are sitting at the table. The guy thinks that he thought it would work. Sky looks around the tavern. He notices that there are only 4 customers. At that moment, a waitress approaches them and asks what they would like to order. Ram raises his hand and shouts for the cheapest one to be brought. Sky sheepishly tells the waitress not to worry about the money. The waitress leaves, saying that everything will be done, and Sky sighs in relief. Rem looks at the girl with distrust and says that she doesn't look like an ordinary waitress. She looks around the room and says that the other customers aren't there for the drinks. She adds that it's impossible not to sense the magic in them. Sky covers his face with his hand and asks if it's true that Ram imagined it too. He says that the waitress seems very suspicious to him. Ram folds his arms and tells the amateur to keep quiet. Sky agrees. The guy looks at the girl and asks where Tarutin is then. He looks at the door near the beer barrels and asks if he could be in the inner part of the tavern. Rem looks at Sky seriously and says no. She says that taverns like this have cellars to store alcohol. They look at the empty room. Rem says the place is rather small for a successful tavern. She says they don't make money from selling alcohol and this is all a cover. Sky says that's why Tarutin was isolated. The girl replies that maybe it wasn't his fault at all. Rem imagines a picture of a boy being dragged away by 2 guys. She says he was first misled by false information and then became a target when he went looking for his parents. The girl looks seriously at the guy and says that most likely everything is as they think. Rem continues and says that Tarutin does not have much wealth and the guys here are too serious to take him alone. The girl says that if you think about it calmly, but Sky interrupts her and asks if the boy was involved in all this. The girl says that maybe he saw something he shouldn't have. Sky looks at her seriously. The waitress comes over and says they're 95% right. The heroes look up and see that they are surrounded by the tavern's patrons. Ram and Sky watch tensely. The waitress says that Ram is a smart girl, but the heroes are poorly disguised, and the guard immediately reports everything to them. Sky whispers to Ram that the waitress turned out to be a bounty hunter. The girl looks at him angrily. She turns to the customers with a swagger and says that no matter how great a person is, it won't prevent them from making mistakes. Sky grins with displeasure. The hero indignantly thinks that he did nothing. He says that it was not so bad. Sky says that even though Rem is smart, he got bored. The girl gets indignant and says that if he praises her, then he should do it right. Sky slams the table and says she's pushed him this far. The guy gets up and says it's time to clean up. The girl responds indifferently that perhaps so. The waitress says she wouldn't be so sure, to which Rem calmly says yes. The woman gets angry. The waitress calls the customers and says that they are not some kind of villains. People come closer. She says that if the heroes behave well, they will not be harmed. Sky looks seriously. He sees the waitress and the man with the cards in front of him. Sky grins. He says they will lose anyway and takes out 2 pistols. The hero shoots. The waitress steps away and says the negotiations have failed. The hero casts a spell and smiles. There are many shots fired. The waitress looks on in fear while Ram sits quietly with his eyes closed. The customers are lying on the floor. The waitress steps aside. Ram continues to sit at the table. The girl smiles as the waitress screams in surprise as to how this happened. Sky stands next to the woman, preparing to cast a spell on her as well, and says that he warned them that they would lose. Sky asks where Tarutin is. Rem says with a confident smile that whenever you deal with Sky, it seems like he's faster than you could ever imagine. The heroes stand in the middle of a tavern with lying customers and a waitress. Sky asks her where Tarutin is. All 3 characters look at each other seriously. The waitress raises her hands and smirks, telling the heroes not to worry because he is safe. She adds that Tarutin is not the main target. She calls the heroes to follow her. They open a secret hatch in the floor and descend into the cellar. They are all standing in the middle of the cellar. Ram and Sky are standing behind the waitress. Ram notices a tattoo on the woman's neck. The girl asks her about this tattoo. She says that the tattoo is similar to the one that the notorious Slain gang had. Rem asks if the waitress has encountered Tartan during her gangster business. The woman turns her back. She is silent at first and then says that the girl is really smart. She asks with a calm smile if it is too late for the heroine to notice the tattoo. Rem asks why she says that. The waitress smiles slyly. The woman smiles maliciously and says that the plan is already being implemented. The heroes look at her in confusion. Ram and Sky look on tensely. They follow the woman further. Rem asks her to tell him what the plan is and what stage it is at. The waitress opens the door and says that she will find out soon enough. They enter a room. The heroes see Tarutan tied up, sitting with his eyes closed. They shout his name. The heroes sit down next to the boy and begin to untie him. Sky asks Tarutan if everything is okay. He touches the student's cheek and remains silent. Tarutan, smiling and with his eyes closed, blows a bubble through his nose. Ram and Sky look at him in fear. Sky screams for Tarutan to get up quickly. The student looks around in horror and sees Sky and Rem. The boy screams in surprise. Tarutan jumps up and thanks the heroes for their help, but adds that he needs to meet his parents as soon as possible. He quickly runs away and shouts goodbye to the heroes. Ram and Sky stand there completely confused as to what's going on. The guy asks the girl if she'll follow him, to which she replies that they've already freed him. Sky says that if she tells the chairman about it, but the girl interrupts him and says that the chairman will not be angry about it. Suddenly, the heroes hear a noise near them and turn around in fear. They hear the bounty hunter telling them that they were so caught up in the quarrel that they forgot about it. Ram and Sky see a monster's head growing out of the waitress's shoulder. She continues by saying that the slain are bandits of justice. The philosophy of Braros, their leader, is to fix the rotten world. She looks at the heroes with a crazy smile while the monster in her hand screams terribly. She says that the heroes will get bored with a full story about their ideology. She uses Oga frame magic. It is an advanced level fire magic. Magical energy consumption 500 and damage 1200. Sky looks at the hunter seriously and raises her gun. The woman smiles and says that it is too late to do anything. The hunter screams that she has already finished the spell and nothing will stop the monster. The fire monster pounces on the heroes with a scream. Sky points her pistols at him and Rem stands behind him, ready to cover the guy. Rem says angrily and calmly that she seems to have completely misunderstood the situation. She shoots the monster and it immediately dissolves. The hunter's frightened face appears. Sky points her guns at her. Sky fires and the hunter flies into the wooden boxes. The hunter hits them and falls. Sky and Ram watch. The woman sits against the wall. Sky says it's ready. When the heroes rose from the basement, they were met by the city guard. Sky raised his gun and shouted in confusion as to what was happening at this moment. Rem took up her katana and shouted that she didn't know. The heroes and guards stood facing each other, ready to attack. Then Jane Adora came in and ordered them to lower their weapons. The guards stepped back to let her through to the heroes. The captain looked at the heroes and said that it was them again. Sky recognized her. The woman continued and said that they must have found shelter first. Rem replied that it was so. Sky looks at Rema. The girl says that their goal was different. Jane glanced at the heroes. The guards inspect the tavern and the lying patrons who attacked the heroes. Jane says that she understands. The woman asks Rema how many people are down there. The girl replies that there is only one unconscious woman. She adds that there was another academy student who was recently kidnapped. Jane nervously wonders if Bravos did all this again. The woman closes her eyes and says that there is still much work to be done. Suddenly, one of the guards bursts in and calls the captain. He runs up to Jane and says he has received an emergency message from headquarters. The woman asks what the message says. The guard whispers something nervously to her. Sky looks at it suspiciously. The hero turns to Rema and thinks that if they don't get out of here right now, they'll be in big trouble. He looks at the captain and says that they'll be leaving now. Jane, dark with anger, listens to the guard. The captain learns information that makes her furious. With her back to the heroes, she asks where they are going. Sky says that since he and Rema are students, they need to return to the academy. Jane turns her head slightly and says that it's pointless. Sky looks at her blankly and asks why. The captain turns around and says she has received information. Jane says that the High School of Magic has been taken over by the Slanes. Ram and Sky turn to look at the captain in horror. She continues and says that Princess Enfia Nashu has also been captured and all the students have been taken hostage. Sky remembers the hunter telling the heroes that they would soon figure it out for themselves when she opened the door to the students' room. He thinks that he understood what she meant then. Jane chuckles and says that the next target of the supposedly noble bandits was the High School of Magic. The captain smiles carnivorously and says, speaking in his head to Braros, that he has fallen low since he decided to demand ransom because he ran out of money. Jane laughed while Sky looked at her, then Rem screamed and asked to wait. She asked excitedly what was wrong with the chairman. She said that Surun Istafer wouldn't let everyone be taken hostage so easily. Capiatan looked at her and said that they didn't have any details yet. She just sent a message to everyone. Rem wanted to object, but Sky grabbed her by the shoulder. He looked at the upset Rem and told her to calm down. He says he knows the chairman won't agree to that. Besides, Rignia is next to her. Sky continues and says that this is a different case because the whole school is taken over. Under such circumstances, the chairman will not take risks. Rem turns to the boy and says that it's all true. She says that the slain were simply overwhelmed by numbers, and as the captain said, if they were held for ransom, they wouldn't be harmed. Sky puts her hand on Ramaz's shoulder and says that no one will get hurt. The girl looked at the guy with embarrassment. Sky looked calmly at Ramaz and asked if that was true. The girl sadly confirmed it. Sky closed his eyes and raised his finger with a satisfied smile. He says that everything is fine, as he said. The hero adds that the chairman is still stubborn. Rem grabs Sky by the collar and starts shaking him, telling him not to say that again. The captain looks at this and thinks what good friends they are. Jane coughs into her fist, drawing attention, and suggests that the heroes return to their conversation. She says that if the slain choose to remain at the school, it will be a bad thing for them. On the other hand, she continues, it will be a good opportunity to destroy them once and for all. The captain looks up and says that she will destroy Braros, but more power is needed. Jane asks the heroes to lend them their powers. She smiles lecherously and says that in her opinion, Sky and Ram are not the most ordinary students. She asks them if she is right. Jane stands in front of the heroes, Sky's mouth twisted in displeasure. The guy folds his arms across his chest and says he refuses. Jane asks, displeased, why. Sky says that half of the hostages are aristocrats. Their parents would be happy to pay ransom for their child if he were trapped like this. The guy throws up his hands and says that the goal, Slanov, is money. He says that this is the solution to the problem. Jane asks if the heroes really think that they can just pay. She does not believe that this will solve the problem and they will just give in. Sky turns to leave. He says that it's their problem and it doesn't concern Sky and Ram. Jane thinks about it. She says that the heroes are right, but there is still a problem. The captain says that the aristocratic students will be ransomed and released, but what about the students from common families? Sky says indifferently that they will be released with everyone else, but Jane objects and says that she doesn't think so. Sky says that the nobles will certainly pay a large ransom for their children. Besides, the princess is a hostage. However, then the rescue of the commoners falls on the shoulders of the royal family. He folds his arms across his chest and finishes his thought by saying that they will have to pay the ransom. Jane asks the guy if he really thinks this will happen. He looks at her, puzzled. The captain says that commoners' parents have little power and the slains will ask for a fabulous sum. She concludes that there is no doubt that the royal family will refuse it. She turns her back and looks over her shoulder, asking the heroes to deal with the bandits so that the normal students don't get hurt. Jane puts her hand on the hilt of her sword. She says that they need to be careful because the students shouldn't get hurt. Jane turns to Sky and asks if he has any friends from ordinary families at the academy. He tenses up. The boy remembers his friend. He hangs his head in shame. Jane looks at Ram and asks what about her. She asks if the girl doesn't want Sky to fight by her side. Ram thinks about it and says that Sky is right, that it would be best to solve this issue with money if possible. She continues to reason and says that, as the captain said, many students could suffer in this situation. The girl raises her head and says that this is exactly what the chairman dislikes the most. Rem says confidently that she agrees. She turns to the boy and begs him to join her. She says she will buy him ice cream. The girl looks at the guy defiantly. He looks at her with displeasure in return. The guy thinks that he can't leave her alone and expose her to danger. Sky turns away, throws his hand behind his head, and shyly says that then he will ask for the white ice cream that the girl ate. Rem happily folds her hands, looking at the hero. She is happy to hear this and says that it is white Biliandria zubulimicus centuria. The heroes see the sky and look up in confusion. Sky and Rem stand with the captain and guards at the High School of Magic and see a barrier. Rem asks what it is. Jane nervously bites her finger and says that it is Kanento's barrier magic. She says that it is another unpleasant thing. The captain walks along the barrier and examines it. She covers her face with her hand and realizes something. The captain turns to the party and tells them to listen to her. She explains that this barrier has been modified to keep out the king's knights. She holds up 3 fingers and says that it includes 3 conditions. Jane starts listing. The first condition is the total amount of magic. If it is more than 5,000, then the barrier provides great resistance, if less, then weak. The second condition is age. If over 20, then the barrier cannot be passed, but if younger, then the resistance disappears. And the third condition is the nature of magic. The nature of fire makes it more resistant, unlike the magic of nothingness. Jane says that in other words, a strong wizard will not pass through the barrier. This is done so that a weak wizard can easily pass through. The captain says that in that case they can use a weak mage as a hostage, and that it is a fairly effective barrier. Jane and the guards discuss the barrier. Ram and Sky stand to the side and listen to their conversation. Sky tenses and thinks about the conditions. The guy thinks that he is not going to participate in this because he fits all the parameters. The hero is 16 years old, he uses the magic of nothingness, and his total damage is 999. Sky is angry and thinks that he is the wizard who is coming. Rem raises his hands in alarm and tries to calm the guy down. Then from behind the barrier, a student calls Sky. The guy sees a student with a note in his hands and recognizes him as his friend Ask. Ask passes through the barrier. Sky asks if he is okay. The student approaches the boy and tells him he is fine. He says that several people were hurt at the beginning of the attack, but everyone else is safe. Sky says that everything is fine then and asks Asuka to leave the place and wait for everyone else. The student screams and asks him to stop. Ask looks at Sky and says he has no intention of running away. He explains that he wants to convey a message from the slain. He shows the note and says that as soon as Ask hands it over, he needs to return immediately, otherwise the slains will start killing the students. Sky grins and says that they wouldn't dare. Then Jane steps between the boys and says that this is a smart move. The captain reaches out to Ask and asks to give her the paper with the request. The boy is surprised and confused, but agrees and hands it over. Jane looks at the note, puzzled. She moves away from the boys and approaches the guards. Sky looks at Asuka. Sky confidently says that she will definitely help the students. The guy smiles and looks at his friend. He tells him not to worry, just wait a little. Ask agrees with a smile. The student leaves and waves his hand. He says that when the strongest Sky says something like that, he has no reason not to believe it. He says that he has already left. Rem and Sky watch Asuka run away through the barrier. Suddenly, Sky becomes serious again. Sky looks ahead confidently. He approaches the captain and asks what the conditions were in the note. Jane looks at the hero seriously and says that, as expected, a ransom is needed. The woman adds that all they can do is wait for the royal order. Then a messenger arrives and calls the captain. He says that the royal order has been sent. The messenger hands the scroll to the captain, for which the latter thanks him. Rem and Sky watch tensely. Jane reads the order. Suddenly sweat runs down her face. She turns her back and says that this is the king's order. The captain turns sharply to the guards and heroes and shouts that from now on, in the name of the royal house, the knights will crush the slains. She adds that the knights should forget all formalities. She orders them to destroy the slains and move forward. The guards and heroes listen to Jane, dumbfounded. One of the knights approaches the woman and asks if this is true. She says that it is unlikely that the letter could be forged. It has the real seal of the king on it. Jane says that the royal family is angry with the slain. The knight objects to something about the hostages, but the captain interrupts him and says that there should be no objections. The captain turns to the guard and says that it was a royal order. The knights look on in fear and silence. Jane pulls her sword out of its sheath and says that from now on all knights will destroy this barrier. The captain raises her sword and shouts that after the barrier is destroyed, the knights must destroy the slains and leave no one alive. At the end, she shouts for the warriors to save everyone from the bandits. The knights support this speech with a loud battle cry. Ray and Sky stand near the knights, who are already rushing into battle. The boy, darkening, thinks that the knights really put the lives of the students below the slains. He remembers his friends and hopes that the warriors will not be fools. He remembers Enfia. Sky realizes whose daughter she is. The guy remembers an episode from the past and starts to get angry. Suddenly, the hero shouts to the captain to wait a minute. Sky shouts that he has a plan and he just needs a little time. Jane tells him to drop it as the royal order is already being carried out. Sky throws up her hands and says she wants a fight. He says she will have a chance to fight Braros. He asks her to just give him a little time. The captain looked angrily at the hero and told him to stop. She approaches the boy and says that Sky will follow her and eliminate Kanento. She says that if the heroes are obedient, the number of their friends that can be saved will increase. The boy firmly says, standing in front of Jane, that he will not leave. The captain looks angrily at the hero. Suddenly, Sky raises his gun and points it at Jane. The captain, holding back his anger, asks if he is serious. The hero looks at the captain with confidence and sternness. Jane smiled. The woman pulled her sword out of its sheath and said that she thought she would just let the heroes eliminate Kanento. Jane rushes to the hero and says that if he wants a fight, then she has no choice. Ram appears immediately. The girl parries the captain's attack and protects Sky, which shocks the heroes. Rem screams for Sky to leave. The girl screams that she will hold the knights. Sky screams her name in horror and does not want to leave. The captain smiles and is surprised. Ram holds Jane's katana sword while Sky stands with her gun raised. The girl screams at the guy to run and she takes charge of the guards. The guy looks at Rama in fear. The hero's mouth twists in despair. Sky runs away and shouts gratitude to the girl as she fights the captain. The hero thoughtfully runs behind the barrier, and Jane notices this. The captain turns and says that this is strange because the barrier should not let strong mages through. Here the heroine's blades collide. The captain and Ram stand opposite each other. The girl says that Jane just doesn't know Sky well. The woman smiles carnivorously and says skeptically that he's not that good. Ram closes his eyes and grins at her words. Suddenly, the girl jumps at the captain, swinging her katana, and says that she is looking too badly. Sky is behind the barrier. He thinks about finding a large space where he can easily control the hostages. He thinks they are probably in the gym. The hero is sure that this is the best place in the school. He runs to the open window and jumps in. Sky enters a small room with stoves. He wonders if this is the kitchen. He looks around and thinks that not only all the students were taken, but all the cooks as well. Suddenly, the hero hears some sound. He sees a slightly open door and thinks that there is someone there. Sky stands near the half-open door, listening to the sounds. He thinks one of the slain decided to have some refreshment. He turns his head and thinks about how he doesn't know how many people are there. The hero raises his gun. Sky kicks the door down and thinks that he can reduce their numbers anyway. The guy pointed his pistols forward and was very surprised. There was a girl standing in the pantry, gorging herself on buns. The hero asks discontentedly what it is. The girl shyly shouts F-Kai's name with her mouth full Vincent. The hero remembers that this is a girl from the guild named Erita, Tangaloi. Sky asks the girl what she is doing here. Erita says with an embarrassed smile that she is constantly hungry due to nerves, so she constantly comes here to eat. The girl says with a smile that the Duchess of Menchi is doing the same and no one knows, and giggles. The hero sighs in disappointment. He asks if the girl knows that the slain have taken over the academy. Erita eagerly replies that she does. She said that she started sneaking in when she noticed everything. The girl enthusiastically says that the knights have arrived to help, to which Sky reacts with disappointment. The guy turns around and says as he leaves that she can't count on them. The girl looks at him in fear. The hero adds that it will take time to destroy the barrier, and there is also an order from the king for complete destruction, to which the girl, horrified, can't say anything. Sky says that the knight's main task is to completely destroy the slains. With his back turned, the hero says that all the students are abandoned to their fate, even she, the Duchess. The girl looks at the guy hopelessly. Erina thoughtfully says that it looks like something serious is going on, to which the hero agrees. The guy tells the girl to stay in the closet so that no harm comes to her and he will sort everything out. Erina is dejected. Suddenly, she says that she will go with the hero, to which Sky turns around in surprise. The girl cheerfully says that she will go with the hero. All students and slains are in the hall. The students sit quietly and fearfully. The slains intimidate the boys. Kanento and Braros stand together and watch. Kainento suddenly sensed something. Breros asks what happened. The mage says that the knights started to destroy the barrier, but they started too early. Breros says that they were unable to satisfy their demand and now do not care about the hostages at all. Kainento says that this is really unexpected. Then the characters turn their attention to the girl next to them. Enfia is sitting on the chair. Nashia, the sixth child of the current king. True royal blood flows in her veins. Breros says that they left even the royal person to die. The girl looks sadly at the floor. All the students are sitting on the floor in front of the stage. Rignia asks the chairperson, but she says she can't do anything. The chairman says that everyone's life is a priority right now. Kainento comes up to them with Enfia. The chairman asks the guy to just be quiet. He says that he understands. Breros and Kainento are actively discussing something. Enfia intervenes in the conversation and says that it seems that something did not go according to plan. Breros turns around and says that you can say that too. The girl looks at him silently. Kainento says that if they can't use the hostages, they'll be in trouble. He asks the leader what to do. Breros is tensely silent. He asks the mage if he knows why they left the knights and created the slains. Breros states the reasons why he created the slain. He says the reason is to overthrow the king and rule the country in the name of the royal family. Enfia smirks, to which the leader reacts. He tells her that she would understand them if she had not grown up as a princess. He goes on to say that the kingdom is expanding every year and its shadow is growing larger and larger. He adds that it would be okay if poverty were the only problem, but that is far from the case. The man recalls the poor areas of the kingdom. He says that people have a hard time even getting food. Every day, terrible things happen that the young lady, the princess, cannot even imagine. Breros says that he and Kainento came from the slums, so they understand everything well. The girl says that such things happen in every country. She looks up at the leader and asks if they really think they can just change the system of the entire country. The man says that there is some truth to that, but he doesn't think that way on a global scale. Breros says that he actually has an overwhelming desire to destroy something. He wants to break something into pieces and he can't do anything about it. He says he couldn't do that because he was a knight. He asks that then he can hit as many times as he wants. He says that the only thing that can always be is the country. That's why the man left the knights and created the slains. He says that what Kainento said earlier was true. Breros laughs evilly and says the truth is he just wants to go on a rampage. Breros and Kainento laugh. The magician says that he thought so. The men stand around the princess. The princess looks up and tells the men that they are simply crazy. They turn to the girl, smiling, and Breros says that it sounds like a compliment. The slains came to the scene. He tells the leader that he received a report from the guard. He says that it looks like one of the knights got inside. The guy says that they have already lost contact with 10 members of the group. Breros reacts to this with horror. Then he smiles and is surprised. The leader turns to the magician and asks if the barrier is broken. Kainento replies that of course not. The leader says that it was not a knight who got in, but a student. Enfia and the chairman are both scared, realizing something. Breros tells the mage that there were rumors of monsters in this school. Kainento says that these two are probably from the student organization and looks at Rignia and the chairman. He says that apparently the rumors were true. This monster has passed through the containment system. He adds that it is a real rampage. The magician grins. Breros laughs loudly and madly. All the students look at him in horror. The man smiles evilly and says that it is becoming more and more interesting. Enfia and the chairman smile and say at the same time that it is true. Breros noticed what the princess said and asked what those expressions were. The princess laughed and the chairman snorted. The girls remember Sky and the princess talks about this monster. Enfia and the chairman look at Breros with confidence and smile. The princess says that this monster will definitely win. The leader smiles and says that this is interesting. At this point, Jane leads the knights and Sky and Irina make their way to the hall. Breros tells the mage that there is a girl assassin outside, the leader of the knights, and inside are students of unclear strength. He feels that this will be more unpleasant than the situation with the royal family. Kainento replies that it is. The magician asks the leader if he has come to any conclusion. Breros says that everything is decided. He says that he is not particularly concerned about money. Breros draws his sword and asks if he should continue to try to suppress his desire to destroy everything. The mage looks at him with a sly smile and Enfia with tension. The School of Magic is still under the barrier. Sky and Erina are running through the corridors. Sky says that soon the enemy will realize that something is wrong. He thinks that the girl follows him silently. He wonders if he can reduce the number of slains even more. Erina tells the hero that she finds it hard to believe that he could defeat 10 trained fighters. The hero looks at her in surprise. The girl says that he is strong after all, however she wants to see other magic. She is rather bored watching everything from behind. She goes forward. Erina begins to warm up and asks if it's time for her to get going. The girl warms up and says it's time for her to get down to business. The guy sighs skeptically and scratches the back of his head. The girl grins confidently. The girl says that there is something around the corner, to which the hero looks questioningly. Erina says that in 15 minutes 2 people will come out of there. She smiles contentedly and the guy thinks that she is just like a dog. The girl prepares herself and turns to her magic. The boy is surprised by what is happening. A fire breaks out. The girl's hands burst into flames. She says it's time to get ready. She casts a fiery fist. This is advanced magic. Mana cost 900 and damage per shot 1800. Sky looks at the girl sadly. He thinks that the throwing speed is 7.59 seconds and the magic conversion speed is 79%. He thinks that it is almost like Reme since she has 80. He thinks that this is a good number for the first strike. The heroes are waiting for the people. 2 men come out from around the corner. The girl immediately pounces on them. She quickly defeats them with her magic. The girl stands in the middle of the hallway and the men lie in different directions. She flexes her fists. Erina asks Sky if he liked it. The guy answers tiredly that it was amazing. Sky thinks it was a normal enemy and he also thinks about his bullets. His thoughts are interrupted by Erina, who says that with his magic bullets he could fire many shots while she fires one in 7.5 seconds. The girl asks if that's what the guy thought when he saw her magic. The guy looks at her confused. He lowered his head and apologized. Erina told him not to worry because the guy was right. She raised her finger and said with a smile that if he thought so, there was a lot in the world that he didn't know. The guy looks at the girl nervously and thinks that he really is not a know-it-all. He asks Erina to show him. Sky asks the girl to show him the world of magic that he doesn't know about. Erina smiles and agrees. She says with a confident smile that she will show you the magic that only true geniuses can possess. The heroes are at the exit to the academy courtyard. Erina and Sky stand at the doors to the courtyard. The girl says that the building is apparently very strong and can withstand any battle. She sniffs. The girl looks at Sky and says that they were obviously backstage when it all happened. She says that in 10 seconds the gym doors will open and members of the slain will come out. The girl glances at the door and says there are about 50 of them. Sky says he understands and raises his gun, ready to attack. Erina points her finger at him sharply and yells at him to wait. The guy looks at the girl, scared. Erina asks if the hero minds if she starts, and Sky is unpleasantly surprised. The guy says discontentedly that there are 50 people there. He says that if even one of them escapes, the hostages will be in danger. The girl reaches out to him and calms him down, telling him not to be afraid. The girl smiles and says she'll be done with them in 27 seconds. Sky asks skeptically about 27 seconds. The guy thinks he doesn't know what she's up to, but if they can hold off 50 people, it will be a lot easier for the hostages to get free. He thinks he won't miss the opportunity to contribute if Erina loses. The girl says there are 3 seconds left. She starts counting down from 2 to 1. The slain suddenly run out of the door. They surround the heroes and Eren tells Sky to stay away. The boy reluctantly agrees. One of the slains is surprised that there is only one person in front of them. Another guy puts his hand on his shoulder and tells him not to let his guard down. He tells the boy to remember what Mr. Kanento said. He told them not to think that these are ordinary first graders. In front of Eren, ready to attack, the girl smirks. She says that it seems that there are smart people among the enemies. She adds that it won't help them anyway and grabs a flat circle with a rope from her belt. The girl throws this circle and tells Sky to look closely. She says that this is real genius. She says that this is real power. The girl shouts the spell Oruin, and a shockwave explodes around her, blinding and knocking back everyone around her. People cover their eyes and ask what it is. Sky screams in confusion as he hears the horrific shockwave. He finally looks up and stares at Eren in horror. Erin was lifted off the ground, her flat circle with the rope spinning quickly behind her. The girl looks forward with a smile, her hands are burning with flames. She uses the nature of fire and fire fists. Sky screams in horror that the cast time is 0 seconds. The girl looks down. The hero says that in one moment she embodied all 100 types of fire magic. At this time, the girl stands in the middle of fire monsters and beasts ready to attack. Erina screams for the fire creatures to rush forward. There is an explosion. The creatures break through the ground along with the slain members. Sky watches in horror. The girl smirks and says that 27 seconds have passed. Erina descends from the air to the ground in front of the blasted earth. She lands on her feet and calms down. The girl wipes the sweat from her forehead and says with a smile that the suppression is complete. The student waves her hand at the hero and says that it's all over. Sky looks at the girl in shock. She smiles confidently and looks at him. Sky and Erina stand opposite each other. The guy says it was great. The girl thanks him. Sky recalls the spells and thinks about how advanced magic has a wide range of possibilities. He thinks that the only thing he needs to do is to deal with all the enemies in time. He turns his head and nervously thinks that even though fire magic is already strong, someone who can do all this in 0 seconds will be so overwhelmed with energy that he will need help. The hero looks at the defeated enemies and the hole in the ground. Sky asks how the girl did it. He asks that she named him Orwin. Erin confirms and says that's where it all started. She says that privileged magic is what geniuses need. Sky looks at the girl and thinks about privileged magic. He thinks he's heard of 700 types of magic, but not a single mention of Orwin. The hero stands in front of Erina and talks about the magic of privileges. He asks what conditions are needed for it. The girl answers that this magic is not so difficult when you are born with it. Erina remembers a lot of open spell books. She says she remembers the whole nature of fire. She wondered what would happen when the total magic indicator exceeded 25,000. He says she realized she could do it. The hero looks at her with bewilderment and thinks that it is clear to him that if he notices an opportunity, he must take advantage of it. He says that, in a word, it looks like his conversion rate is 200%. She asks why 27 seconds was chosen. The girl recalls what just happened and says that her total magic power was 27,000 after draining her mana with the Fire Fist spell. She says that one would think that she easily used 1,000 magic power in 1 second. The girl throws up her hands and says that it really stretches. She adds that Orwin can carry all the magical power within himself. Sky says that there is no magician who could endure the hardest 27 seconds. The girl says that this is approximately true. The guy thinks he's figured out that Orwin has nothing to do with me since his total magic is only 999. The girl smiles stupidly, questioningly, looking at the guy. Sky realizes something and raises her head in confusion. The hero yells at Erina and tells her to wait. He asks if she has no magic power now. The girl blushes shyly and smiles. The girl is lying and says that everything is as he says. Sky panics and asks in hopes that she has anything left. The girl leans towards the guy, uncomprehending. She screams that she has used up absolutely everything, so there is nothing she can do. At that moment, the wall behind her explodes. Braros appears and says that he is finally in charge. The heroes turn to him in bewilderment. The deputy lies before them. Sky looks at him and asks if he is the leader of the slain. Braros replies that he is. The hero looks at him angrily and suddenly starts shooting. The hero, in a fit of rage, shoots at the leader. Smoke appears on the field. Erina looks into the smoke in surprise. Sky looks tensely, holding 2 pistols up. The heroes see something in the smoke, then someone's leg appears. It turns out that Braros survived and remained unharmed. Sky looks at him and thinks that nothing will happen to him. Braros says that he understands. He says he heard the baby substitute was strong, but it turns out he's not. He says that the girl goes all in and looks at Erina. He looks at his hand and says someone hurt him for the first time in a long time. The man looks at Sky and says that the kid who did the damage is holding a staff. He asks the hero if he used this attack to stop the attack on the Lace family casino. The guy is silent. Braros calmly reacts and creates a black hole. Here appears a huge white bear. It is Kamai, the magical beast, the king of the grizzlies, his physical condition. Braros, holding his great sword on his shoulder, says that now the real battle will begin. Sky looks at the bear in horror and thinks that his henchman, judging by his appearance, must be much weaker than the dragons the hero fought. The bear looks at the guy with fury. Sky thinks, what kind of impressive power is this? The hero calls Pierrot, holding out his pistols. A small clown peeks out of the black hole. He tells Sky not to call him in critical situations because he is scared. The boy asks the clown that he is not able to, so it should not matter to him. Pierrot replies that it is, and he is scared. Breros laughs, seeing this picture. The leader says that minions usually grow with their master. He says that his bear was losing to dragons at first, but now his roar alone makes dragons tremble in fear. He says that Sky may still be growing. Suddenly, Breros runs at the hero, swinging his sword. He tells the guy not to think about dying right away from his power. The hero is ready to repel the attack, but then someone casts a spell. Between Breros and Sky, it turns out that it was placed by Kainento. He calmly looks at the heroes. The deputy jumps up and runs into the academy. He runs past Kainento and Sky, who are standing opposite each other. The hero says that the mage doesn't seem to be going to let him go that easily. Kainento says their target is no longer the hostages. He's talking about someone who can sense the crushing power of Breros. He says this person is reasonable and level-headed. He won't do anything rash and will put evacuation first. He says there's one more thing. The hero looks at the mage with disdain. The man says he wants to focus only on Sky. Kainento smiles smugly. The guy thinks that the mage's gaze is somewhat reminiscent of Breros. The mage, with an excited smile, offers to begin. Sky agrees and quickly starts shooting, but Kainento doesn't parry. It turns out that the guy's bullets hit the magician's shield. The hero exclaims in horror. The magician says that no matter how much the hero shoots, magic will not reach him. He offers to show him something. Then the hero sees a small animal. It is Skux, a spirit, a carbuncle. The man says that it is his assistant animal. He says that this barrier is created by Skux power. Kainento adds that it is usually impossible to put up a strong barrier in such a short period of time. He asks the hero if he knows the difference between barrier magic and barrier magic. All the while, Sky tries to break through the mage's shield. Kainento says that the difference is in the position and time. The barrier is set on the terrain and needs to stay there for a long time. In order to move it, the barrier is placed over a large area and with great care. Its disadvantage is that it cannot be quickly removed and reinstalled. Barrier magic is not suitable for combat. However, barrier magic does not require a location, and the barrier can be quickly erected and removed. The mage says that it is inferior to the regular barrier in accuracy, and its disadvantage is that it cannot be kept on for long. Sky has stopped shooting and listens with his pistols raised. Pierrot listens as well. Kainento says that this is just his opinion. Such a barrier usually cannot be set up at such a speed. One barrier every 5 seconds is the limit. He tells Sky that he shoots at an unimaginable speed. He thinks that he has no chance against his powerful magic. The hero asks Pierrot if the mage could have guessed about strengthening the magic bullet by creating a hit-and-miss trick. Pierrot smiles slyly. Kainento asks Sky what makes the impossible possible. He answers himself that it is, firstly, the development of Skux, just like Breros Kamui, but that is not enough. The mage becomes serious and says that the most important thing is preliminary preparation. He has placed many magic stones around the school. These stones, the mage says, create a certain field around the school. Within this field, the barrier magic of those inside is strengthened. He says that in other words, magic is strengthened. The battle for him is not just a clash of pure brute force, but also skill. Kainento says that these skills include preparation, thinking, building a strategy, and then winning. The man says with a smug smile that the winner is always right. The hero looks at him angrily. Sky picks up a pill. It's a mana recovery pill. He thinks angrily that a barrier that can't be broken even with 2,000 damage from a shot using creating a trick is a problem, but there is a solution. The hero raises his gun.